Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великой страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар.
Future sun.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1023 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And Israel is saying they're going to strike Iran's nuclear facilities coming up. That's under consideration right now. And also, Ukraine has launched more ATACMS missiles at Russia in a big strike. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces have been able to conduct a decisive strike over the past 24 hours with ATACMS missiles inside the Rostov-on-Don territory. The strike's so serious, the Russian government had to come out today and admit that the strike has occurred and that the damage appears to be wildly significant to Russian military abilities and Russian command and control of the expeditionary forces that are currently inside of Ukraine at this moment. Meanwhile, inside the Middle East, we've been able to hear that the Israeli Defense Forces are now publicly declaring that due to the clearing of the skies over Syria, they will now be conducting a strike in the near future, most likely, against that of the Islamic Republic of Iran and its nuclear research and development programs that are continuing to race towards creating a weapon of mass destruction that could wreak havoc throughout the entirety of the region and possibly around the world. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear major news from in the area of the Taiwan Strait, as it does appear that the Chinese simulated naval blockade of the island is coming to an end at the exact same time that the Taiwanese government appears to possibly be getting ready for the defense of the island, as the war game had been lasting for so long up until that point. In other areas of the world, we have also been able to hear some pretty significant news, as the brand new NATO Secretary General has stated that many countries inside of NATO, including some of the major European powers, need to rapidly expand their military spending in preparation for possible armed confrontation with the Russian Federation several years in the future, as it does appear that the situation on Europe is going from cold to somewhat warmer, and of course, while there is not an ongoing war at this moment, it most likely will not be for several years, war preparations are a necessity, according to the Secretary General. Meanwhile, the United States forces of the Grand Republic have been able to achieve another major success today, as we have been able to hear that the second hypersonic launch of an American-made missile has been conducted from the area of the Cape Canaveral testing facility, and it appears that the launch was a wild success, the missile operating exactly as expected, and it does appear that the United States hypersonic arm will be prepared and ready and largely combat operational, most likely within the next few years. We have also been able to hear from inside the Ukraine war, the Russian Federation continues to grind itself down amongst Ukrainian defensive positions, as the Ukrainians have been able to hold their positions in the Sudzha direction today in the Kursk Oblast, as well as Vovchansk and northern Kupiansk, although oddly enough, the entirety of the front line in video and picture evidence and between Seversk, Bakhmut, and Pokrovsk has gone silent today, although the Russian Federation does appear, according to information from Atesh partisans around the city of Melitopol, to be moving in a large amount of forces from the directions of Rostov-on-Don and Crimea, as it does appear that they are going to be conducting a southern front offensive near to the area of the city of Zaporizhia here in the very near future. We have loads and loads of news to cover here over the next 24-hour period that we have right now, and it is really a pretty wild news day, and we've also been able to get a lot more developments out of the Middle East as well, largely showing us what this area is sort of forming up to at this point with what's going on. And I'll also be showing y'all something else that's a little bit wild here in a minute. But with that,
whoever said that December was a slow news month? Because in 2024, it's impossible to have a slow news month. And December is going to be crazy as well, probably going right into the new year, and today's no exception to that.
No doubt about it, it is certainly not an exception. This has been an absolutely wild time of news in the world, for that matter, really in history over just the past year, as a lot of things have really started to escalate and have really been getting onto our news cycle pretty regularly at this point. But moving on into the major news that we were able to hear, we got an announcement today from the Rostov-on-Don Southern Military District Command that apparently they are going to be monitoring the possible ATACMS and ballistic missile strikes in the Rostov region. From what we understand, the Ukrainians have attacked the Russian Rostov-on-Don Oblast, or Rostov Oblast, just last night in the area of Taganrog, striking critical facilities to help the Russian Federation continue to update and maintain a large amount of their strategic bomber fleet and heavy aircraft out of the city of Taganrog. We have also been able to hear that there have been some other attacks that have occurred as well throughout the Oblast, although information about these attacks has been somewhat minimal. However, we can confirm by official government statements of the Russian Federation today and by Ukrainian statements yesterday, along with a limited amount of video footage that came out at Taganrog, that a substantial ATACMS attack has occurred in the region, and we are still trying to get a large amount of information about the actual damage that has been caused from these strikes. There are a significant number of strategic locations and sites within the Rostov-on-Don Oblast that the Ukrainians could hit, including a large amount of military airfields, some major ammunition dumps, as well as some communication and command headquarters that are exclusively within Rostov-on-Don and largely are controlling the entirety of the Ukraine war from their headquarters. We largely were able to rule out, though, that the military headquarters of the Southern Military District in Rostov-on-Don have been stricken and destroyed, as it doesn't appear that any video and picture evidence has come from the city limits, or more so, of the Rostov-on-Don region, where that strike would have had to have occurred. The actual Southern Military District headquarters building is in the dead center of the city of Rostov-on-Don, and if the Ukrainians had successfully stricken this with an ATACMS missile, we would have been able to get video and picture evidence of that immediately. This lets us know that the Ukrainians have not hit any of the command and communication abilities of the Russian Federation within this area. It appears that they hit some sort of logistical or military abilities, actual physical arms abilities of the Russian Federation going forward. One primary target that has been a source of Ukrainian attacks in the past has been the Morozovsk airfield, and while it has been largely destroyed by drones alone over the course of this year, we may believe that this has been another source of another ATACMS strike, but once again, no video or picture evidence has emerged from the nearby town of Morozovsk like it normally would, proving to us that these ATACMS struck the Morozovsk airbase. So at this point, it largely is a mystery as to the exact damage that has been caused by this strike, but nevertheless, the Russians have been hit pretty hard from what we know. It's just that we don't know the exact details yet. And this comes right in the middle of the Russian Federation, according to the Department of Defense, preparing to fire another Oreshnik intermediate range range ballistic missile into Ukraine, once again with a MIRV warhead on board, and once again attempting to conduct a form of nuclear blackmail or nuclear escalation against the state of Ukraine and the Western world. We have also been able to hear some major news, speaking of nuclear escalation, that it appears that the Israelis inside the Middle East are preparing to take swift and pretty violent action against the Iranians in a very short time to destroy their possible nuclear abilities that may be emerging here within the beginning or the middle part of next year. According to an Israeli statement that we were able to get a little while ago, it does seem as though that according to a direct statement that was quoted by the Times of Israel from an Israeli military commander, due to the dramatic changes in the Middle East, especially the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime, which allowed for the Israeli Air Force to take out the vast majority of Syria's air defenses, the Israeli military believes there is now an opportunity to strike Iran's nuclear sites. And that was a direct quote from the Israeli Defense Forces that was quoted by the Times of Israel, which published this on Twitter and then was retweeted by Jason JROTC, where we got the tweet right there. It does appear,
if Israel can start 4 different wars, might as well start a 5th one. If you have 4, go ahead and start 5.
You know, who in the world ever said that 4 wars was too much? Let's bump it up to 5. But nevertheless, that war is kind of technically ongoing at the moment. It's just that it goes through ebbs and flows. But it does appear that the Israelis are already beginning to prepare for a strike against the Islamic Republic of Iran's nuclear research and development facilities that largely were not hit last time. We were able to hear of a single nuclear research and development facility that was hit just to the southeast of Tehran, inside of the area, and let me make sure that I get this correct, of the Kajir National Park, or somewhere around this general area. I actually believe that it was, and I believe the facility was right here. I think this was it, if I'm remembering correctly. This was the actual facility that was stricken by the Israelis. But nevertheless, they were able to strike one of them, but according to information and intelligence that has been coming out since then, we largely understand that this nuclear research and development facility was more so on the research end, really trying to figure out the mathematical limitations of creating a nuclear weapon, and also trying to figure out what the actual delivery system would look like. It wasn't exactly on the material end of producing things such as yellow cake uranium or weapons-grade forms of radioactive material that could be used inside of a nuclear weapon. Generally, most of those facilities are not in the city of Tehran. Those are actually found further south and largely within central Iran at the city of Isfahan, which is home to a large amount of the Islamic Republic's nuclear research and development programs and facilities that continue to push the Iranians closer and closer with each passing week to having a usable nuclear weapon that would be tested somewhere inside of an isolated region of the Islamic Republic. Nevertheless, it does appear that we were able to get some additional information to corroborate this claim by the Israelis today from Iran International in English, where they stated that the Israeli Air Force is intensifying preparations for potential strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, citing the weakening of Tehran's proxies and the fall of the Assad regime in Syria as strategic opportunities, and once again largely attributed to a source that spoke to the Times of Israel, reported citing an Israeli military official in their publication. This is giving us enough credence to know that the Israelis are seriously considering some form of a strike against the Iranian nuclear facilities, and with the changing atmosphere in the region, it does seem as though that may end up being a possibility. The Israelis have been able to deal deadly blows to Hezbollah and Hamas, which are some of the largest and most important Iranian proxy forces within the region that not only threaten Israel, but also threaten the greater Western and American interests that are present inside of this region. Not only that, the Israelis have also dealt limited blows to the Yemeni Houthis along the western coast of Yemen. And while the United States and the United Kingdom have largely been carrying out these actions to the greatest extent, the Israelis still have been involved in punching around the Houthis here and there and kind of putting them back in their place, reminding them that they're only a small rebel group on the Red Sea and not a major regional power like the Saudi Arabians or Israel for that matter. It does seem as though the Israelis are really giving this a serious thought, as they have been for quite some time, really over the course of months. And once again, this may be a prime time opportunity, considering that time is only ticking away, to be able to destroy Iran's nuclear weapons program before they actually have a usable nuclear weapon at their disposal. And a lot of people appear to be believing that the Israelis are actually going to do it this time, as serious last-minute considerations are being made to the attack. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about this as well? Will the attack actually happen and go through, or do you think that this may just be a lot of hype talk at the moment about the possibility of finally, once and for all, knocking out the major nuclear threat that Iran may become in the future?
All right, so it looks like a wild whopping 85% of the audience said Israel will probably hit the sites, the nuclear sites inside of Iran, while 4% said Israel will not hit the sites. Only 4% of the audience believes that Israel's not going to do it, and 6% said it sounds like a bluff, but I'm on the fence, maybe so. And honestly, like on the question of should they do it, I would say absolutely. Go ahead and hit the nuclear facilities. They should have done that the last time they attacked, and they were actually held back by the United States administration not to strike the nuclear facilities. That was a mistake, and Netanyahu wanted to hit those facilities back in the last attack, but once again, he was held back. So I think Israel is simply returning and circling back, as they would say, to this issue to actually hit them this time, because I have a feeling that the foreign policy is changing just a little bit in the Middle East, and it looks like the Iran response is going to be very, very harsh coming up in the coming months, with the U.S. response and also the Israeli response as well. So I have a feeling they might end up hitting the sites just out of the blue, and it might actually be backed up by the U.S. this time. So I'm with the 85%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I largely do believe that the Israelis are going to give this a pretty clear shot at hitting the nuclear sites. From what we understand, the Islamic Republic of Iran, regardless of the situation that's actually happening in Syria at this moment, has been dealt a deadly blow in the region, at least at this time. Syria and the Bashar al-Assad regime has completely collapsed inside of the country, meaning that the ability for Iran to be able to supply and fund their forces inside of southern Lebanon, as well as inside of the Gaza Strip, has been completely diminished at the moment, as we do not believe that any of the groups inside of Syria are friendly to the Islamic Republic of Iran or their interests of continuing a war with Israel. For this reason, we generally know that not only did they lose their ability to fund and support their proxies, they also lost really one of their only allies in the region, which was the Assad regime inside of Syria. So with this all in mind, it does appear that the Iranians are pretty much isolated on their own, except for some thoughts and prayers from the Russian Federation, which really don't count for much. So with all of this in mind, putting the whole picture together, the Iranians are actually in a situation to where no one can really respond on their behalf. If the Israelis bomb them, the Russians could probably lodge a diplomatic complaint, but that's really about it. So the situation is actually a prime-time opportunity for the Israelis to be able to strike the Iranians and largely knock them out of the nuclear game before they can even get into it. And once again, we do have to remind ourselves that this is probably a very prudent and wise action, as time is only ticking. The Islamic Republic of Iran is continuing to develop a nuclear weapon, according to all information and sources that we have from the United States, from Israel, and from European sources as well. And once they create a usable nuclear weapon that is tested in a testing ground, that means that the Iranians are now a nuclear power, and dealing with them in any way, shape, or form in the future becomes a lot more difficult, and ever really putting a real end to the proxy forces that the Iranians are funding and supporting, like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, would be practically impossible, because we would never have the opportunity to strike directly at the source of largely the funding and the weapons, which would be the Islamic Republic of Iran. So for this reason, I do believe that the Israelis will be striking these nuclear research and development facilities, even if they didn't have the blessing of the United States of America, at least for the time, as that situation may be changing here very soon, at least as far as the aggressiveness against the Islamic Republic of Iran, according to what we're hearing. But nevertheless, it does appear that
I personally have a feeling that no matter what the case is, Israel's always going to want the blessing of the United States, because even though Israel's a very, very strong military power, they do want the reassurance and the safety net of knowing the U.S. would come in and back them up 100% if something did end up going down between Iran and Israel directly. So me personally, I would have to say that I think Israel probably will only operate with their blessing. The fact that they didn't do it last time after they didn't get the blessing of the current administration, that indicates that they're probably not very confident going in by themselves, so I think they might wait.
Maybe so, maybe they'll wait, but at this point, I would have to say, not getting into what's happening domestically in the United States, but we do understand, at least from what we're knowing, that the president-elect that's coming in the future appears to be a lot more openly hostile to the Islamic Republic of Iran than the current administration, which was hostile to the Islamic Republic of Iran, but not overtly hostile and possibly undertaking aggressive actions. So with that in mind, at least based on what we're hearing at the moment, which words are not always equivalent to actions. It does seem as though the Israelis may be conducting actions at this moment without the blessings of the current president, because the incoming president may overlook the actions and largely say that those were actually justified actions, although the prior administration may have not wanted for them to happen at all and would have rather had a more measured approach to the Islamic Republic and the actions that they continue to take inside the region. Only time will really tell on that one, though. Of course, we really don't know entirely for sure, But still, we were able to hear that while the Israelis are preparing for a strike on Iran's nuclear research and development facilities, helping them to create a nuclear weapon, some other situations appear to have not gone that well with Israeli planning. It seems as though the Israeli airstrikes against the Syrian interim government, and I also have to make that announcement today here, may have not ended too well, as we are starting to hear that the interim government is starting to make clear actions of erasing the Assad regime's legacy on Syria and creating a new country out of the ashes of the former Syrian Arab Republic. We were able to hear out of Damascus today that the interim government has suspended the parliament and the constitution of Syria for an entirety of 3 months. This is a very important move, and a lot of people would be believing that this seems very draconian. There's really no way to tell at this moment. This is generally something that has to happen when a new government is being formed, as a new government generally will have a new form of an approach to the Syrian governance, or really the governance of any nation, and so largely the constitution that has previously existed has to be suspended, then completely thrown out, and then a new constitution has to be written, given the authority for the government to operate within certain parameters. That's what we're believing is most likely happening at this moment, is that they're currently throwing out the Assad regime's parliament and constitution, so that way they can start to work on creating a new Syria with a new parliament and a new constitution. Whatever will come of that, we don't really know. It could head towards the area of being a secular federal republic, which would be largely in line with what the SDF wants, or it could start to turn into an Islamic emirate, largely with a dictatorship, but a lot more reserved in its approach to its traditional stances ideologically, much like the Kingdom of Jordan or the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which largely have free market economies, but still largely practice some traditional elements of their ideologies. And that's largely what we're seeing at this point. And we were able to see that due to negotiations today, the existence of the SDF is now finally coming to an end as well, as it appears that they are now raising the flags of the interim government throughout the area of the Syrian Democratic Forces controlled territory, which we were able to see right here. And it does appear that there has been an agreement made that has been amicable enough for the SDF to actually start to absorb itself into the interim government and start working towards a more democratic future for the Syrian Republic, at least at this time. So at this moment, we're actually going to be deleting all of the borders that we have on screen for the HTS on the west coast, the SDF within the northern controlled areas, the area of the Syrian Free Army's area of control, as well as the Druze rebels, as it does appear that the entire country now, well, largely we should have done this a little bit earlier, especially with the HTS, the Druze rebels, and the SFA, because they had all already pretty much formed together or molded or melded together to create the interim government, but the SDF finally appears to be coming under interim government control today as well, as they now all push forward to try and figure out what the future of Syria is going to look like. Meanwhile, there's something very interesting that was a holdover that we mentioned a while ago, and it actually is true. There are loads of Russians that have been abandoned inside of Syria, and we're actually starting to finally get pictures of them today. And it appears that they're still trying to hold down the bases that they're at. The rebels have not violently put down the Russians at any of these bases, and one of the more interesting ones that we saw today was near to the Syrian border town of Kamishli, that is actually within the area of former SDF-controlled territory. And we were able to see a load of Russians stranded at this airport. We even saw an entire Ka-52 just sitting at the airport with nothing to do. They cannot fly the helicopter at this point, and it appears that, at least from what we're understanding right now, there's no way for the Russians to fly in and recover any of these folks, at least in this area of SDF controlled territory, as Russian aircraft may end up being shot down. We were also able to see some Russians within the nearby settlement as well of Kamishli in this picture here. And we were also able to see a large amount of Russian military vehicles and equipment still sitting at the base, and once again, the Russians are just stranded here. It doesn't appear that they have a way out, at least at the Al-Kamishli airport within northeastern Syria, and it actually looks like they're legitimately stuck, at least in this spot at this moment. I don't
You know what's also interesting, enforcers, I'm not sure if you've covered this part of the story already, but apparently the Russians are actually cordoning off the city itself of Kamishli, and they're not letting U.S. forces enter the city, and they're keeping them actually out of the city. So I'm not really sure what the exact status of that little skirmish actually is right now, but apparently U.S. forces are not allowed to go into this area as the Russians have cordoned it off.
That is interesting. I actually have not heard that at the moment. I've only heard that they were stranded at Kamishli, and I did not hear that they had actually started to cordon off the town. So in the future, probably tomorrow, we'll probably start to mark this as a temporarily Russian-controlled territory, considering it appears that the Russians are actually trying to aggressively survive in the hostile conditions that they now have pretty much been abandoned in by the Russian government. Meanwhile, along the coastline, we even got to see that no one really was able to leave the Kaminin airport as well, about several miles south of Latakia, as we were able to get drone footage today from the Syrian rebels themselves, showing the Russians are still here and stuck on the base. They were not able to leave in time. And from what we generally understand, no Russian aircraft are really able to easily get in or out at the moment, considering that the entire surroundings around the airport are controlled by the rebels, and there's a great fear that due to their limited anti-air capabilities at the moment, they might be able to shoot down Russian aircraft as they're on final approach to land at the runway at the Kaminin airport.
Man, I sure hope the Russians are forced to abandon all that equipment, because you remember how bad they bashed us? Like, honestly, on this one, they might have had a point, but they bashed us so bad about the failed withdrawal from Afghanistan. The Russians were going ham with the propaganda against the U.S. over that one. And if they're forced to leave their stuff here in Syria, that would be like a fitting, end to that hypocritical statement they were making.
Man, it really would, honestly. It would be hilarious if that was the case. But still, there's no way that they can make this sound better than what happened to us in Afghanistan. Because what happened in Afghanistan, we actually sent more soldiers, actual infantry, into Afghanistan to hold down the Kabul International Airport and also other sensitive areas to at least get the armed forces and essential personnel out. And while some citizens were left behind, the Russians literally left entire operational bases behind and told them they were on their own for about an entire week at this point, until they're finally starting to give a little bit more attention to them and see about getting them out, maybe. But this was an absolute unmitigated disaster. And we can also see some Russian KAMAZ trucks still racing around, as it appears that their surface-to-air radars are still active at the airport, maybe even showing that some of the air defense systems, some of the more valuable ones, have not left the airfield, at least at this time.
They should probably just pack up and run. Like, just, leave the area and just run across the border and take off at this point. Just leave your stuff behind. We'll take care of it.
Yeah, I think that would be a pretty good move. And we can even see a large amount of IL-76s and also a smaller Antonov-style supply aircraft sitting on the runway. We can also see a good deal of Russian military personnel still scurrying around the base trying to figure out what to do, although there really isn't much for them to do, at least at this moment.
Also, someone said, why are you trying to defend the Afghan withdrawal, bro? I'm not defending it. Like, we just don't get political here. We don't get into that. But no, I think it's pretty much universally accepted by pretty much everybody that the Afghanistan withdrawal was not what you'd call a perfect maneuver by any means. And I think pretty much everybody agrees on that. So, no need to get too deep in the weeds on it, but it certainly was not professional.
Yeah, I don't really think we even have to say that the withdrawal from Afghanistan was bad. Like, I think that literally everybody knows that as a fact at this point, but the whole point of me pointing out how badly the Russians are doing is to say, everyone thought we did bad, look how bad the Russians are doing. Because, America is still the best, the Russians just cannot compare. That's the honest truth. We fail, but we fail with some grace. The Russians fail, and they literally fall so hard on their face they knock their own teeth out. So there's a little bit of a difference in the amount of failure in between America and Russia. While both fail, the Russians usually fail at a far greater pace and in a far more impressive way, literally having entire Su-34 fighter bombers sitting at the airport that didn't get out. I mean, these planes could literally fly out of the country, and now they can't fly them out because they're scared they're going to get shot down by a man-pad as soon as they take off from the runway at the airport. They're in a part of their air force is literally stuck. That didn't happen with the United States. I believe we left some helicopters behind, but any aircraft that were at Bagram, such as F-15s or F-16s, were not left behind. You can literally just fly them out of the country. The Russians screwed up so badly, they're in a situation where they can literally just not fly them out of the country. They're stuck at the airfield until they figure out what to do or some sort of an arrangement where they can fly them out or just abandon them. So the Russians do fail far worse than America, and Russians can cope. But we can still see a decent amount of Russian aircraft, Su-34s, stuck at the airfield. A large amount of them. It actually seems like an entire fighter bomber squad is stuck at this airfield. Some Su-24s as well.
Very juicy. You know what the Russians are having to currently decide? Are they going to destroy these highly needed jets? Like, they just really can't just toss these jets away because they need them quite badly. But their alternative is they got to destroy them and scuttle them if they're going to have to run off and leave. So I bet that's a tricky situation. It's probably why they're holding out hope, is because they don't want to destroy those aircraft. They want to salvage them if possible.
Yeah, it's something interesting because look at this. Now, this was something I just saw and I was like, oh. So you see Su-24s right here, pretty normal. Holy moly, those are brand new Su-35s right there. You can actually see, because usually, let me go see if I can pull you all up a picture of the Su-35. The Su-35 has a modernized paint job that is usually a little lighter in color, and also they have this blackened paint job around the front of the canopy. They don't really have that on older variants like the Su-27s themselves, and there's an Su-35, and these things, at least as far as the Su-35's existence, are fairly limited in number. There's only about 160 of them in the world, so seeing a few of these there, this has got to hurt the Russians. This is probably why they're giving this a really serious moment, because they're trying to figure out, are we going to lose a load of Su-34 fighter bombers, which are pretty expensive and pretty advanced technologically for the Russians, and they really cannot afford to lose that many of them. Can they afford to lose that many Su-24s? And most importantly, are they able to lose any Su-35s like these? I'm not going to lie, Su-35s actually do look pretty good. They've got some pretty sleek lines on them. But nonetheless, that has got to hurt the Russians to know that there's an entire squadron of them left behind inside of Syria at this point, and they cannot get them out.
That's got to be a tricky one right there.
You know
I'm just not sure how they're going to solve that, really, because I think ultimately, if I had to make a crystal ball prediction here before it's over with, they might find a way to maybe get a couple out. Like, could they actually transport them by road, and take a few apart and try to get a few out of there like that?
Oh, that would be difficult, man, because they would have to somehow come up with an arrangement with the Syrians, well, with the interim government, and then possibly all the factions that are popping up in some of the areas where there is a small power vacuum at the moment to get it through. Then they would have to negotiate with the Turks, which would be a firm no, because while the Turks are doing Turkey things, they're not that pro-Russian. Or they would have to negotiate with Iraq and Iran to be able to transport them through, and then with Armenia or Azerbaijan for the final leg. So there's just too many countries involved to just drive them out. You would have to fly these things out some way to get them back to Russia.
So in that case, then, I'm actually with James Buchanan in the live chat. He said they'll probably be scuttled. And yeah, that actually might be the really hard decision they're going to have to end up making, is scuttling those very expensive aircraft that they desperately need. And it's going to be a very heavy decision for them. So that's probably my prediction. And also, I saw Brad B say in the live chat, he said, which one's more important, the jets or the pilots? Well, I would say, honestly, typically, me personally, I was about to say pilots, because the amount of training that a pilot takes to actually get competent and good at flying the aircraft is quite extensive. But in this case, though, I think the jets are actually more important, because Russia is running a little bit low, and without the jets, obviously pilots do no good. So I think they need the jets right now from that airfield.
I'm not gonna have to lie. I'm gonna have to be honest, Matthew, while I stutter my way through that. But beyond that, I'm not gonna lie, Matthew. I think the aircraft are more important for the Russians at this point. They are probably able to train more pilots nowadays than they're able to produce aircraft inside of Russia. So with that in mind, I think they're probably wanting to get the aircraft out more so than the pilots, because without the aircraft, there's nothing for the pilots to fly right now inside of Russia. Also, by the way, I just want to show you all this. This is the airport that y'all saw on the drone footage. By the way, the drone footage was gathered by the rebels today, kind of giving you all the idea of how much control they actually have around the surrounding area. But beyond that, this was the exact area that we were looking at, these light shelters that have been made to protect the aircraft. And you can also see one Su-24 right there being pulled out by a tractor, or possibly being pulled back into its shelter by a tractor. But nevertheless, this is the airport that the Russians are currently stuck in. And they're not just stuck at this one, they're also stuck at this one all the way up here in northeastern Syria at Kamishli, which is right here. We don't understand that there's anything else outside of this airport but army aviation of the Russian army, including helicopters. We don't think there's any aircraft that operate here, but nevertheless, these are two larger contingents of Russian forces that are currently stuck inside of Syria. But it does seem as though the diplomatic situation with the Syrians may be getting a little bit more difficult. And much like we have predicted on this channel, possible actions by Western aligned countries may be leading the new Syrian interim government down an inevitable path that may end up becoming anti-Western. Many people will know that the Israelis did conduct a large air barrage of the Syrians a little while ago, striking nearly 250 individual targets throughout the entirety of the Republic of Syria, or the Syrian interim government's controlled territory at this time. And at this moment, we do understand that the Israelis are still occupying a more so significant amount of territory in this area at the moment. We are able to see this laid out on the map, and we can see that it really is only the northern areas of the DMZ that the Israelis have militarized, and we can also see a couple of areas in purple beyond the DMZ that the Israelis do currently control. The areas that are in gray are outside of the buffer zone that are claimed to be under Israeli control, but we really do not have a lot of proof, as Intel Schizo claimed, to really verify whether the Israelis are in that area or not. So we're kind of leaving that up in the air, including Intel Schizo, on whether or not that actually is the reality of the Israeli situation on the ground. But while this did happen, it appears that the airstrikes that the Israelis conducted against the interim government may be leading them down a little bit of an inevitable path. Now, I do want to explain really quickly the paths that are laid ahead of the Syrian interim government and what choices they will make. It generally does appear that the Syrian interim government is going to either be going down a secular federal republic model or some sort of a model of an Islamic emirate or some form of an Islamic kingdom. We are highly doubting that it'll be a kingdom. It most likely will be some form of an emirate, but that is not an incredibly bad thing. Yes, it will not be 100% westernized, at least in its form of governance, but nevertheless, emirates are nothing new to the region, and there are plenty of emirates that currently exist in this area that are western aligned, including the literally named United Arab Emirates, which is an emirate that a lot of people like a great deal because of that giant building they built inside of Dubai that has to have all of its shit driven out into the desert to be dumped off every day because it wasn't connected to the sewer. But beyond that, the United Arab Emirates is largely an American-aligned country within the region, and it is 100% an actual emirate. If Syria does turn into some form of an Islamic emirate, it is not an in-game scenario where the Syrians are 100% an enemy of the West. There are plenty of Islamic countries that largely lean towards being an emirate, like the Kingdom of Jordan and Saudi Arabia, along with Qatar and Bahrain and Kuwait, that are still Western and American-aligned, and so it's not an end-all, be-all situation if that's the case. Another thing, though, and also some people are asking, what is an emirate? An emirate is kind of, sort of like, the best way I can explain it, it's almost like a kingdom, but not really. Matthew, do you really know how to describe an emirate? Because I'm actually having a hard time describing what an emirate is.
You see, an emirate is those airlines, you know, those ones with the nice liveries and stuff like that that come pick you up, man. That's an emirate to me.
Let me make sure to get, let's see here. So an emirate is specifically a land that is controlled by an emir, and an emir is a guy, let's see here, he is just specifically a Muslim ruler of the country. So that's what an emirate is, and that's what the United Emirates is. That's largely what the Kingdom of Jordan is, as the Kingdom of Jordan is an Islamic country, and Saudi Arabia is as well, probably the largest and most influential of the Emirates, if you want to call them that, inside of the region, although technically Jordan and Saudi Arabia are kingdoms, not emirates. But nevertheless, also, let's see here. Mo Barazi said, Emirates is a collection of kingdoms. If that's the case, that really just does fall under a kingdom naming convention, because usually in kingdoms, there are usually a great deal of lords that hold positions or princes that hold positions that are below the king, but generally the lords actually have more power than the king themselves, and usually that creates a great deal of political regulation where there isn't really an authoritarian leader, because the king can only really get by with making the political decisions by having a great deal of the lords aligned with them. I'm not exactly sure how that works in a political circumstance inside of the Middle East, but I do understand how the political structure worked inside of Europe. So if it's a similar form of a model, that won't be that bad of a thing, because generally we have seen that a lot of these countries have ended up being largely successful and Western aligned while not having a completely westernized government. Nevertheless, out of those two directions, neither of them are that bad, and once again, the situation direction is entirely in line with becoming a Western country, especially with their implementation of a free market economy, as that is showing they are moving completely away from the ties that Bashar al-Assad had, largely having a semi-state controlled or regulated economy, and this is giving us an idea that they certainly could fall within a Western fold in the future. However, it does seem, much like we predicted a few days ago, that Israeli actions that largely are appearing to be hostile in form against this new Syrian interim government may be leading them away from the West. While they 100% either way that they go could fall within a Western framework, either as a federal republic or a form of an Islamic emirate, it does appear that the Israelis may have pushed them far away enough that it does appear that the Russians are possibly negotiating a return to the port of Tartus with the Syrian interim government, at least at this point. According to Bloomberg Middle East, talks are taking place for Russian forces to remain at a naval port and airbase in Syria. And the two bases, well, the port and the airbase that they're wanting to stay at is the airbase south of Latakia, which we just showed you all a moment ago, and also the port of Tartus. We always have to remind folks that the diplomatic situation is far more different than the military situation or the strategic situation in force of arms. And one always has to be able to carefully control what kind of a response is needed. The Syrian Republic, or the Syrian interim government, is brand spanking new, and on a governmental level, it is entirely brand new, washed of the sins of old, and quite literally a brand new nation before us that could go really either way. We do not know which direction it's heading in at this moment, and it largely is a game that is being played right now in between the axis of evil, which would largely be Iran and Russia, and the Western world, which would largely be led by the United States, to pull Syria one direction or the other. We want Syria to go down a path where they end up being a part of the Western world, and that is a very large prerogative. Removing Russian control from the region is an incredibly important thing, and we could do this without firing a shot by largely supporting and encouraging the Syrian interim government, which would start to change them into a more so amicable form of government, just like the UAE, just like the Kingdom of Jordan, just like Saudi Arabia, just like Kuwait. We could turn them into a Western ally without them fitting the mold perfectly, but Israeli actions in the area may be making them incredibly leery of moving into the Western direction, because it appears that the Israelis may be making it clear that they're not really welcome in the Western direction. But nevertheless, it does seem as though a lot of people are giving a decent amount of talk about this in the chat, and I have seen a lot of people talking about many different kinds of things about the Syrian interim government and everything else in between with the Syrians. I'm seeing that some people are saying, let's see, why would the new rulers trust Russia? It really doesn't matter if they trust him. It really matters what choice they have. If Israel is bombing the Syrians, and we have to make that very clear, they did bomb them. It's not like the Assad regime was around anymore. And I also don't get the point of that with the Israeli statement today, which I'll kind of expound on a little bit more here. The Israelis said, now that Assad's regime has collapsed, we destroyed the Assad regime's abilities, now that it doesn't exist, to shoot down our airplanes, which never was a problem before. Now we are going to start bombing the Iranians. It's like, I don't really know what kind of gymnastics were done mentally there, because they have already stricken the Iranians before fairly easily with the Assad government in control with air defense entirely intact. It didn't really seem to make that much of a difference at the time for them to be able to strike Iran. So I don't really know why they had to go through and start destroying the interim government's military abilities quite literally a day after the interim government began to exist. Actually, it was the day that the interim government finally formed. That didn't really make a lot of sense, and already would be putting the Syrians on a more so hostile footing with the Israelis, not by choice, but because they were bombed. And, you know, if you get bombed, you largely don't look at the people that bombed you as being nice people. So with that in mind, if the Syrians ever lodged a complaint, the United States has to pick in between the Syrian rebels, which may be a little bit of an uncertain future, or the tried and true certainty of knowing that Israel will largely remain Western aligned. So then the United States is going to pick to go with Israel. So then Syria has no way to turn to the West, and so then they'll automatically go right back to where they came from, which is being Iranian and Russian aligned, meaning that we kind of lost
Now, You know, Enforcer, one thing I've been wondering here is, me personally, I see where you're coming from on that. Like, obviously, bombing the Syrians by the Israeli side certainly did not lead to what you'd call a good opening of relations between the Syrian rebels and Israel. But I think probably the biggest guiding factor here is probably what are the Russians offering the Syrian rebels to make them open up talks? Because surely they were offered something of interest, or otherwise, why would they be entertaining the fact that Russians could stay at their port? That to me probably strikes me as being maybe there's something in the background that they're being offered that maybe we're not offering them, that's making them once again open talks.
Maybe that's the case, but at the same time, at this point, we're playing a power game in the Middle East that's very important. We do not want the Russians to be there. And if they continue to stay at Tartus and Latakia, once again we've lost literally everything that this entire war was about, which was pushing the Assad regime out and having a Western aligned Syria in place and also getting rid of the Russians inside of the Middle East. If we fail at that, we have pretty much failed at literally changing the situation at all, and it's the same situation going on into the next few decades when it really matters that we have entire control of the Middle East. So in my opinion, we either need to figure out what they're offering the interim government to try and get this deal going forward and maybe counter it with an even sweeter deal from the United States to ensure that they keep the Russians out, because we do not want the Russians there.
It's risky though. Like that's what I was about to say as well. Maybe we should offer something even greater than what the Russians are offering to get these rebels on our side. But with the Middle East being so volatile, that carries a very big risk with it. Because let's say the rebels stay on our side for a little while, and then all of a sudden we're like, okay, we can't keep sending you the same amount of support. And then the rebels decide, oh look, we're just going to go and start getting bids from the Russians now to like go on their side if the U.S. won't keep giving us support. And that puts us in a bit of a bad spot because then the rebels are well armed because we've given them stuff of value, and then they might just flip right back to the Russian side and flip anti-Western. So it's a bit tricky. I'm not really sure if the Russians are offering them something, if we could really counter that in a common sense way, or we might be opening ourselves up to some major risk.
I would say that we could offer them some form of economic support, possibly the allowance of very low tariffs of Syrian trade with the West to really draw them in, or we could possibly start to deal with the Gulf states, and I believe their Gulf Cooperation Council or something along those lines. I forgot the exact name, and see if they would be willing to open up pretty much unmitigated trade with the Syrian interim government. Because if we were able to do that, it's not giving them any weapons that could be used against us later, but it's giving them a massive monetary incentive to shift towards the Western direction. And then we'll arm them later once we have a pretty good assurance that they are going to remain Western aligned due to economic reasons. That probably would be the best way to work around this, because it's not screwing us over on a military sense. We're not giving them any weapons that could be used against us later, but at the same time, we're also giving them a very large reason to join the West. There would be economic opportunities for them well on into the future. All they have to do is, accept our hand in friendship and kick the Russians out. That's all they have to do, and then we can largely ensure that they will never let the Russians back in, because they won't want to lose the pretty much untapped money flow and prosperity that would reach the Syrian people.
That's true, and I guess if we could do that and actually pull it off where it made sense, it probably would be good if we could come to some sort of agreement to have limited American forces inside of Syria, not an occupation or returning back to fighting like on the ground, but simply having temporary bases to be able to monitor the fact that maybe maybe Iran might be sending equipment maybe through the Syrian territory, and we could have a first-hand look at that and be able to stop it potentially before it was able to happen.
I think that would be a pretty good move overall. Non-military support and economic support would probably do a lot more for them, trying to get them in our direction, and also offering some U.S. military support, at least inside of Syria, to crush the rebels would probably be a good thing as well, because that was welcomed by the Iraqis back with the rise of ISIS. They welcomed us back with open arms to return back into Iraq in larger numbers and start dealing with ISIS with them and crushing them. So I think the Syrians would probably be happy to have the same thing. U.S. military support in limited roles on the ground, and also a great gateway into the Western economic world. That would probably ensure that they would never head back towards the Iranian or Russian direction, because the money would go with it if they turn back towards that direction.
Yeah, maybe so. Whatever the case is, if we could have a Western-aligned Syria within reason, as long as we're not going to arm them and then they flip back to the Russian side, that would be really bad, actually. As long as we could do it in common sense, that would be excellent to have Syria on our side, cut off Iran from shipping stuff back over to Lebanon to the proxy forces, and also, once again, try to keep the tensions low as possible by basically feeding them a little bit of money from time to time to keep them happy and, obviously not radicalizing people on a regular basis.
Also, I keep on seeing people say something, and I'm gonna have to lift up the barrier here and just be honest. A lot of people are misinformed and continue to say that the HTS is in control of Syria and they're terrorists. The HTS is not in control of the country. The Syrian interim government is in control of the country, which is a combination right now of the Syrian Democratic Forces, the Syrian Free Army, the Druze rebels, which all three of those factions control the bulk of Syrian lands and are democratically aligned and want to create a secular form of government. And then the HTS is also a part of the merger into the interim government as well, which is looking more so for an Islamic form of governance. But from what we understand, they have really started to downplay that a great deal because they have started to realize that that form of radical Islamism doesn't really seem to be that popular these days anymore inside of Syria. And so to get any kind of public support, they have to heavily roll that back. So going off of that, the HTS is not in control of Syria, and while they may be a small part of the interim government, that does not mean that the entirety of Syria is run by a terrorist regime. That is just not the case. It is an interim government that is going to start figuring out the future of Syria. So that's what we're working with. Like, I see a lot of people saying, oh my god, you know, like literally Osama bin Laden's running Syria right now, and he's not, because the HTS is not in control of Syria. It is the interim government, like I've been calling it all night tonight. You can go and pull that up. It's quite literally the truth. The interim government is the one that's now running things inside of Syria, not the HTS, not the SDF, not the SFA, and not the Druze rebels in southern Syria. None of them are running the show anymore. It's now the interim government, and so I hope that addresses that well. I just see people continuously insisting that it's now a terrorist-run nation like Afghanistan was, and that's just simply not the case. Because when the Taliban took over Afghanistan, there was no interim government. It literally just went straight back into Taliban control as an Islamic emirate. There was no questions about what does the future of Afghanistan look like. There was none of that. The Taliban literally just plopped down their flag in the middle of Kabul, and that was the end of the game, and they won it. Right now, the Syrian rebels won the war, threw down the flag of Assad, raised a new flag. It was not the flag of the Tahrir al-Sham, which is the Tahrir Tahrir al-Sham or something along those lines. It is the flag of the Syrian interim government. Like, if y'all go look at Syria right now, it is run by this group, the Syrian interim government. This is not the flag of the HTS. This is not a flag of, I believe, even the Syrian, well, actually, I think this is the flag of the Syrian Free Army, because they were pretty much the direct armed forces of the Syrian interim government. And this isn't the flag of the Druze rebels or the SDF. This is the flag of a brand new government that is going to be largely taking the considerations of all four factions combined and trying to create a nation that isn't perfect for everyone, but amicable for most. That's what they're doing at the moment. So that's I hope that addresses that fairly well. Let me see if I can get some answers here really quickly about who is in charge right now of the Syrian interim government, because it does appear that everyone here is incumbent. But it also doesn't appear that we get a lot of information about them. So let's see here. Right now, these are the prime ministers. Well, at least this is the current prime minister right here, Abdurrahman Mustafa. And he's a Syrian Turkmen politician who's the incumbent president of the Syrian Turkmen Assembly and the umbrella organization of the Turkmen political movements in Syria and the political leader of the Turkmen National Movement of Syria. So he's got a pretty long title there on an official level, but he is currently the prime minister of the interim government, at least from what we can tell. So with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. I'm trying to clear up a lot of the bad air that a lot of people have at the moment about the information of what's going on the ground in Syria, because that's literally the group that's running it. If you want proof again, I can show you that now that the SDF has merged with the rest of the so-called rebel groups, if you want to understand it that way, they're not flying the flag of the HTS, they're flying the flag of the interim government, like you could see right there on the side of this building. That's the flag that the SDF is raising throughout all of their territory, because it's not being run by the Tahrir al-Sham, it's being run by the interim government itself. And I know I've said that about 7 times now, but I got to drill that into folks' heads and make that clear, because a few people continue to insist that it's the terrorists that have taken control of the country and not the interim government. But Matthew, I heard you were about to say something there.
I actually wasn't about to say anything, but now that I have the chance here, I will say this. With the U.S. considering taking that group off of the terrorist watch list, they technically were classified as terrorists before. So I think that's the reason why some people are saying that. But they are being considered taking off the watch list because it looks like, once again, like we've been saying, that they are going to try to play fair, at least for now, until things change. So we have to kind of roll with that as it's happening. If it changes in the future, we can obviously back off and change our position. But until then, it's better to give them the benefit of the doubt instead of just going straight in guns blazing and thinking things are going to go sideways without any proof.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. And a lot of people don't have proof that it's going sideways yet, but everyone wants to assume it does. And a lot of also one other thing that I keep seeing people saying is that, well, there's bad blood in the region and everyone wants Israel dead, so they just bomb everyone because, that's just the way it is. Like, I just gotta say, like, that's just ignorance on a lot of people's parts, because no one around Israel wants them dead right now, except for the Iranian proxies in Lebanon, and also Hamas inside the Gaza Strip. Those are the only people around Israel right now who are actively trying to kill them. And then the Syrian interim government is just, it's existing at the moment. It's not actively trying to invade Israel. If it was, we would already see that there would be active fighting at the Syrian DMZ, and there isn't. So that's largely showing us that they're not wishing to go to war with the Israelis. And on top of that, that's a mindset from like the 50s, back when everyone was trying to kill them. But I don't know if many people remember this, but when Iran launched hundreds of ballistic missiles at Israel, do y'all know one of the main countries that was shooting down those missiles? It was the Kingdom of Jordan. Which is an Islamic emirate for the large part, and it was largely defending Israel's airspace. So if it's just true that every single Islamic country is bad and they have to be bombed, then why in the world were the Israelis pretty much giving a big thumbs up to the Jordanians when they were defending their skies hand in hand with them when the Iranians were attacking them? That wouldn't make any sense if that was the world we were living in, and that isn't the world we live in. We live in a world where a lot of the Islamic countries inside of the Middle East are actually largely in the same sphere as the Israelis, which is the American sphere. Just like Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain. And while some of them may be a little bit more lukewarm than others, they still don't conduct a direct hostile action against the Israelis, trying to kill them on a daily basis. That would be living in a fictitious world if that was the reality these days, because that's just not the case on the ground. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into a little bit more of something major outside of the Middle East, as we were able to hear today that the NATO Secretary General wants to prepare for the possibility of war. And a lot of people may be looking at this guy and going, what the hell? That's not Stoltenberg, and it is not Stoltenberg. This is actually General Root, who is the new Secretary General of NATO, and he has warned that the alliance is not prepared for the threats it will face from Russia in the coming years, and called for a shift to wartime thinking with significantly higher defense spending. And his direct quote was, "The danger is heading toward us at full speed. What is happening in Ukraine could happen here as well." And he is once again wanting to boost the military spending of each country above the 2% minimum requirement of the NATO alliance currently. And it seems as though a lot of people are believing that a major threat is looming, and the statements of the new General Secretary or Secretary General are very appropriate given the circumstances. And Matthew, what are people saying about this, and what are you thinking as well?
All right, so it looks like after the NATO secretary did say it's time to shift to a war mindset and prepare for the worst, what are your thoughts? So it's an evenly split poll. One of the first times I've ever seen this. Oh, it just got unevenly split down. But anyways, 44% said 44% said it means a threat is looming, while 43% said he means World War III is coming, and 7% said it sounds kind of meaningless. And I will say, obviously, we should have been boosting spending since the beginning of the Ukraine war, because that indicated that Russia was on the loose and they were looking for blood. So we should have been doing that then as well. So he's simply reminding people it's time to get on the warpath, per se, to get ready to defend ourselves if necessary. And remember, NATO is defensive only. He's not saying to prepare for wars and we're going to launch war. It's only if Russia launches an attack on us and causes us to declare Article 5. So he's basically just giving everybody a reminder. And once again, it's kind of his job to do this. His job is to make sure that all members are prepared for war, and he's just simply doing his job. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I want to make sure to remind y'all, of a phrase that has been said for a long, long time. In fact, it's so old that it actually is in Latin. And I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. There's no technical correct pronunciation for Latin, but I hope I'm getting it across to most people. It is civis pacem parabellum, which means if you want peace, prepare for war. And it's a statement literally as old as time. The general idea behind that claim is that if you want to ensure that your nation remains a peaceful nation that is not gripped by the wretches of war, one must have an armed force or an ability to defend oneself that is so strong and powerful it deters your enemies from even attacking you in the first place. And that is how you truly prevent war. It's not through always extending the dove. Sometimes it's by showing that the dove is much more preferable than the spear that one will have shoved through their throat if they go to war with you. So with that in mind, I would say that the NATO Secretary General isn't saying that World War III is coming. He's once again emphasizing the mindset that if we want peace, we must be strong enough and powerful enough to maintain that peace by threatening the Russians so badly that a war with us is just unpreferable, and they'd rather go through the diplomatic negotiating tables or maybe even just throw out the white dove to make sure that the war doesn't begin with NATO. That is generally what the Secretary General is saying, in my opinion, and I would agree with that 100%. That's what the United States has emphasized for decades at this point since the end of World War II, and it has been a tried and true strategy. No one has ever had the actual gall to directly fight the United States after World War II, except for the People's Republic of China in the Korean War, and that was the only time that anyone ever directly went to war itself with the United States, where we were not largely getting involved in a war or starting one ourselves. It's pretty wild when you think about that, because it does 100% show that that mindset is an accurate one. And largely Europe did follow that mindset up until the collapse of the Soviet Union. But with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the question started to arise in Europe: what are we doing? Spending all of this money on the military, because there's no legitimate threat anymore that is directly threatening us. And then from that point forward, the only wars that really existed that affected Europe were these more so asymmetrical, low-intensity wars like Iraq and Afghanistan they would get involved in limited roles, largely in that asymmetrical role, which really never required a large military. It just required a much smaller, well-trained military, which was not only really more so fit to the historical situation at the time, it was also a lot more cheaper for these nations to finance. And this meant that they could start spending government money on more important civil projects, increasing the education and infrastructure of these countries respectively. But times are once again starting to change, and we are seeing that the Russian Federation is starting to prove itself to be a major adversary in the area of Eastern Europe, and one that could threaten the peace quite seriously, especially if Europe continues to present a weak front militarily and continues to not really respond to the situation appropriately. So with that in mind, we should see that many of the European countries continue to arm themselves and get themselves above the 2% GDP spending quota to make sure that every single country is so strong in the alliance, the Russian Federation wouldn't want to pick a fight with any single one of them, much less the entirety of the alliance as a whole. So I would say that that's my opinion at this point on what the Secretary General said today, and I think that he is 100% in his rights to say something along those lines, as it is a very appropriate statement given the kind of circumstance that we find ourselves in at the moment. But moving on from that, it is now time for us to skirt on around and into China, interestingly enough, specifically the areas around the island of Taiwan. But before we get to that, I do want to make sure that we address at least a handful of questions before we get on into our next news segment here. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so let's address our first super chats of the night, the support to the channel, that is. And our first one here goes to Praise Adonai, who puts in a very generous $50 donation. And thank you very much, Praise Adonai, for that very generous support. And they said, Enforcer Matt and Andrew, if peace is negotiated under the new U.S. admin early next year, what in your estimation is Ukraine's best scenario in assets that would be kept by Ukraine? And what will Russia take from the negotiations? And yeehaw, and LSA.
And I thank you so much for the support, Praise Adonai. And it is really hard to actually give an answer to that, because negotiations can go any way, shape, or form, and that is quite truly crystal balling to the extreme. It's really hard to even say what happens happens a couple of months from now, it is impossible to really say what would happen in peace negotiations, especially when one side isn't on the point of, well, really either side isn't really at the exact point of capitulation yet. So we could see that Ukraine regains some of its territory. We could see that they end up ceding more territory and then end up joining NATO. We could see that the peace negotiations fall apart entirely and the war keeps going well on into the end of that year and maybe even the beginning of the next in 2026.
Nope. I said, yep, that's probably the likely option in my opinion. It's probably going to keep on going. There's really just no way. Like, once again, Zelensky's saying, I think he said at one point that he was willing to give up some of the Russian-occupied territories in exchange for NATO membership, but that was only in the case of getting NATO membership. And NATO is saying that they're not going to let Ukraine in, even under that little fragmented circumstance that Zelensky's talking about. So really, there's no current plan out there by anybody that is satisfactory to either Putin or Zelensky or even the West at that point. In fact, NATO countries don't even want to support the idea of giving up Ukrainian land, and it sounds like Zelensky is basically saying that's never going to happen unless we get the ultimate NATO protection under Article 5, which is probably not going to happen.
And so it's a really hard thing to say, like Matthew's also showing right there, what really will happen. And there's a million different things. Like, I could explain some of them. One of the leading mindsets right now in trying to create a peace is actually allowing the Russians to keep the land they have now. Ukraine gives back the land they're holding in Kursk back to the Russians. And then we create a DMZ along the entirety of the Ukrainian border with Russia, including the front line that exists right now, that is patrolled and protected by European Union forces, as well as, well, not European Union forces, largely just NATO forces in general from Europe, as well as the United States, and Ukraine then enters NATO. That's one of the plans being floated. Another one is that Ukraine does not join NATO immediately. They cede the territories, including a little bit of additional parts, including the city of Zaporizhia and Kherson, considering that the Russians illegally claim that they control the entirety of the oblast. The Ukrainians would just give it up to not create issues, and then the Ukrainians would remain a neutral but Western aligned country that has still provided a large amount of arms and support well on into the future, and is largely economically tied to the West, but is not a direct member of NATO. Another thing that could happen is that the Russians give up quite literally everything except for Crimea, or they give up everything including Crimea, and then Ukraine does not join NATO, or Ukraine does join NATO. There's a million different ways that the negotiations could go, but honestly at this point, it's impossible to even say that any of that would happen at all, because Russia is quite openly showing at this point they are really not open to any terms in negotiations except for total victory, which is unacceptable to the Western world as well as it's being unacceptable to Ukraine. Not only that, the United States is seeing that Ukraine is still insisting on the return largely of most of their territories if possible, which Russia is completely unacceptable to and will not accept those kinds of terms, as that largely means that the Ukrainians have achieved a total victory in the war and the Russians are not amicable to that. So right now, both sides, regardless of the United States' best attempts to try and create a peace, are not at all in a position where they really want to negotiate a peace, even if it means compromising. So at this point, it's really hard to tell where it would even go, and the honest truth is that this war will grind on a good bit farther until an actual serious peace negotiation is made, and that means an inevitable fact and an inevitable certainty. U.S. support will probably ramp up even greater than it currently has been in the past in the future to try and see the war get ground down even quicker and for a peace to be achieved faster. It's kind of a little messed up when you think about it that way, but it is kind of true that to get a peace quicker, you got to kill people faster, and that's largely what we'll be kind of emphasizing in Ukraine at that point if peace negotiations fall apart. We will be helping the Ukrainians to wipe out the Russian army faster and more brutally than it ever has, so that way the Russians start to take peace accords more seriously and come back to the negotiating table quicker, because the losses that they'll be taking will be unpalatable at that point. That's largely what we'll probably be seeing as the actual reality. But I do thank you so much for the support. Praise that night and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we really wouldn't be able to answer good questions like that are kind of open-ended and really don't have an exact answer, but I hope we were able to give a very likely or reasonable answer at the moment based off of the reality of the situation on the ground. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best we can. Huge thanks to you once again for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Ambi who puts in a $22 donation,
Hey!
and thank you very much, Ambi for that support. They said, I scouted for 3 weeks in the 60s, and the badges make a boy well-rounded man. And my concern is the enforcers, no military service, and who by default failed scouting. Is there an equivalent exam? And until then, here's to the brownie fund. Now listen here. Here's the thing. I was not, then they're talking about Boy Scouts, right? They're talking about Boy Scouts when they say scouting?
I think so, yeah.
So I was in something that was even a little bit better than that, actually, in my opinion. We were in the JROTC, the like
Yeah, the
military
hall
equivalent of the Boy
monitors.
Scouts. Yes, the hall monitors, and we got to wear like a mock military uniform and all that good stuff like that. So guess what? We didn't get badges, we did get ribbons though. So we got actually I ended up getting pretty good amount of ribbons before it was over with, and I think the enforcer did too. So no military service, yes, you're true, but a little JROTC if we're going to talk about the Boy Scouts. But enforcer, what say you?
Man, I think you and me had as many ribbons by the end of JROTC as Millie had in that portrait when he was the chief of staff. I think we had about that many each. Like, I'm not even kidding. We had loads of them. I had loads of medals, loads of ribbons. Matthew actually kept his uniform from JROTC. He actually bought it. I didn't. I just, like, I kind of didn't really care. So I was just like, oh, whatever. But beyond that, I did stay in JROTC for about 3 years. So I'm 100% like a verified, well-rounded boy or a man, whatever you want to call it, because it was a well-rounded kind of an organization. People were getting cussed out daily. There was like no organization. It was kind of chaotic. But hey, it still worked, kind of, sort of. I got to give a massive respect, though. I still got to respect our SAI, who was an incredibly interesting person and actually had a lot of, in real life, military experience. Of course, you have to have military experience to be a veteran, actually, to be a instructor for a JROTC. He was very cool. Some of the other people in the JROTC, like the actual students, not that great, but still, I was in there for 3 years, and I ended up quitting before my senior year because of, like, internal JROTC political stuff. I was like, I just don't like it anymore, and how it was going. But I think I left as I wasn't an 03. I forgot how they called the little ranks in there, but it was like a cadet captain or something along those lines. So I was on up there. Matthew actually made it to the highest rank you could make it to in his last
Lieutenant
year.
Colonel.
Yeah, Lieutenant Colonel, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel in the JROTC. So, while we weren't in Boy Scouts and we didn't have any military experience, I guess you could say that we had a little bit. And also, we ran our ports of the, let's see here, how do we call it? We are parts of the JROTC the best we could. I was a company commander, and we actually had a Best Company of the Month award that would go out, and my company was dominating, man. Like, it was like getting that award so much they actually stopped giving out the awards because we were embarrassing every other company in the JROTC doing that. And Matthew actually...
Do you know how hard I had to fight to get that implemented, like the company of the month thing? Like, I was like trying to create competition, and for some reason, nobody was wild about that idea. They were like, no, you don't want to create competition. It's not a pissing contest. It sounds like vaguely reminiscent of what some other goofball said here on YouTube about the support to Ukraine. But I was trying my hardest to get that implemented. And finally, they did it. And it was a success because it got people competing against one another, and they were actually starting to improve the companies for once because they were actually stagnating up to that point because most people were like, it really means something. Maybe something here and there will improve on. But after the competition started, it was so much better.
Yeah, and I think my company was granted a pizza party or something for winning the most companies of the month or something along those. Yeah, I think it was the case that happened. That was a pretty cool thing that we did. But I was always still with like all the drama that happens, because high school kids have like kind of like a hall monitor kind of a thing at that point. There was a lot of drama involved in it. I still had a good bit of fun with it, and I always loved wearing the dress uniforms and getting involved and all that kind of stuff. But then I got the great news that I had double major scoliosis, and then every recruiter treated me like I had leprosy, so I never got to actually get towards joining the military, which is an incredibly unfortunate thing because I actually wanted to, but then I never got to. So then I had to move on to other stuff like trying to get into becoming an attorney, and then this happened, and so that's where I am at now. So I guess kind of technically we were hall monitors or whatever you want to call it, in that kind of.
Well, we were very knowledgeable hall monitors. Remember, I was actually also, I can't remember, I didn't start it. I think I was a second leader of it, but I took over the military knowledge academic team, which is actually, JLab. I took that over, and we started winning so many competitions and trophies in that because I literally held like practices and like knowledge, like drills and things like that on a regular basis, and got the entire team together for that. So we were like slaughtering in competitions. Like we were going in there to these like military knowledge tests and going wild, like coming out with trophy after trophy after trophy. Not to brag or anything like that, but if you go by our old high school and you look in the trophy case, there is a ton of academic team trophies. I wonder if they're still keeping that up at that high school or not. Because I have a feeling that after we left, they might have let that go a little bit with the academic team, but we were just slaughtering.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was pretty good, and we had a pretty fun time with that. So I hope that addresses that fairly well, Amby Pamby. Also, Matthew, someone said this, and I was getting a laugh out of this. Let's see. Oh, you already got him. Someone said,
The
"Wow."
pretending army. He said, no, it's not. Listen, I understand people say it's like, like army light, but the catch is, though, the idea behind JROTC is not to necessarily like give proper military training. It's to inspire patriotism in people in high school, so that way they want to join the military. And also, if you complete all 4 years of JROTC, you do go in as an E3 instead of an E1 if you decide to go into the military. So I actually got that certificate. So if I wanted to go into the military, I could have gone in as a private first class, but I chose not to. But I did have that there. So no, you actually have real army like perks for doing it.
Yeah, you actually do get some perks for joining the military afterwards from being in the JROTC. It's not really a lot because, being bumped up from like E1 to E3, it's not like that big of a pay jump or anything like that, but it still is some. So it does count for something. But I always had fun in that little thing. At least when I was in it. But towards the third year, it started to get a little bit unfun because kind of like I guess not really like the real military, but kind of like anything, once you start to get to the higher level, the managerial side of things, it starts becoming a lot less fun because you're dealing with like this politicking sort of a thing at that point. And generally I was like, nah, I'm not a big fan of that at all. So let's see here. And I'm seeing a lot of people joking on the JROTC. Yeah, the JROTC is pretty annoying. I'm not gonna lie. Like, a lot of the people who were in it were pretty annoying. I'm not even gonna kid about that at all. We had one kid in there that was so annoying. Like, I never took it too seriously. Like, I liked wearing the little uniform and stuff, but I was still me, and I'd still clown around and joke with everyone, and I just didn't really care that much because, you find out that rank literally means nothing either in JROTC or outside of it. And even at the beginning, I didn't really care that much about that. I just wanted the rank just because I thought it would be cool to have it. But beyond that, there were some kids in there who took it way too seriously and really were like the kids you hear about where you're like, you're insulting a future army soldier. There were so many of them. Like, one time there was this one girl in there that was wanting to join the Marine Corps, and I swear she had to have had some sort of issues because in the upcoming Christmas parade, I was just given the, like, you're gonna hold the Marine Corps flag and like march down the street with it. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, it didn't really matter to me if I got a flag at all or not. I was just like, that's kind of cool. So then this girl actually started crying and saying that I couldn't represent the Corps because she's the only one that could, because she's a real Marine at heart already. I was like, okay, that's kind of cringe because we're only in like 10th grade right now, but okay. So then they took me off the flag and gave the flag to her. And then, funnily enough, she actually ended up joining the Marines, and now she hates it. It's like, I don't know how that works, but anyways.
What's interesting is that JROTC is actually typically, like, the reason why there's actually quite a few obnoxious people in JROTC is some people actually put their kid in there because they're actually troubled, like, somewhat, like they have behavioral issues and things like that, and they're hoping that maybe the Army instructor is going to straighten them out. But typically, though, the Army instructor is not there to straighten your kid out. They're there to actually just, how do I say this politically? They're there to do their job, but they're not there to take over parenting, if that's the thing that they're looking for. Like, there was a few screaming matches actually, like, broke out between the Army instructor and a few really, really bad behavior, like, cadets in the program. Actually, the Army instructor actually almost jumped one dude that was in there that thought he was going to get all gangster with the Army instructor. He almost got jumped, which was interesting. I've never seen that in the high school before, but he actually deserved it. But it's actually not very common.
Yeah, it's not common at all. But honestly, it was an interesting experience. It was about as fun as anything else you could do in high school. I would say, though, in my opinion, it was a lot better than being in the band because they treated the damn band like subhuman people. Like, I don't know what it was. Like, you had to, like, die of dehydration. And, like, if someone died in your family, you couldn't go to their funeral because band is more important. Like, it was insane how our band was run. And that was kind of like the choice that was being made beforehand was like, do you want to do the band or do you not want to? And then you have to do something. So then it was JROTC because, I wasn't going to do robotics. Like, I just didn't have any aptitude for robotics. So anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, Amby Pamby. Thank you so much once again for support. And I hope that does kind of qualify a little bit, at least in your opinion. And so with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're moving on into the rest of the news.
And our last super chat of the segment goes to Leora Abigail, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Leora, for that generous support once again. And she said, hey, enforcers, and you should imitate the Russian version, Hot Dog Man, as a depiction of Putin getting karma from the fall of Syria, LMFAO.
Oh, man, blöd. Oh, man, blöd, done. I love Syria, done. One day, blöd, done. I don't even know how to do that. That's like such a mix, doing Hot Dog Man, Putin, and the fall of Syria. That one's a tough one. I hope that kind of like qualified a little bit, at least with the guttural noises that would be made as a combination of the three. But nevertheless, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to bust out a good joke here and there like that. And I got to thank you so much once again, Leora Abigail, for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, because you're an old guard of the channel, been around for an incredibly long time, and helped us to keep this thing running. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this thing possible up till today, and we wouldn't be able to keep making it possible well on into the future. And speaking of well on into the future, we have to get into the news from today, and we got a lot of it. And we were able to hear that today the blockade exercise appears to be waning. We were able to get this from Indo-Pacific News, Geopolitics and Defense on Twitter. Big shout out to them, because they wrote a literal essay and also showed the containment island chains that I was talking about the other day. Look at that, literally here. But the second island chain really doesn't count, because it's quite literally just Japan, Guam, and then like you connect it to Papua New Guinea. So it doesn't really count, because there's literally only one island pretty much on that entire chain. So is that really a chain, or is that more so just linking the dots in between Japan, Guam, and Papua New Guinea? The first island chain is legitimately a chain of islands containing China. But nevertheless, it does appear that the extended war games are finally ending, and the Chinese naval vessels are finally returning back to their ports. Still, the diplomatic situation is high, and well, running high, and is fairly tense, and hopefully we'll be able to see the United States and the Western world continue to support Taiwan well on into the future. Meanwhile, inside the Russian Federation, we were able to see that a warehouse caught on fire in Novosibirsk, burning out 7,000 square meters of retail space or storage space. Sabotage, maybe? Perhaps? Who knows? But moving on from that clip and out of that area, it's time for us to move on up into Moscow itself, where we were able to hear that the Ukrainians assassinated the deputy chief designer of some of the missiles that the Russian Federation is currently using in the war. I can't show you all that picture, but if y'all want, the link is in the description below to this map, and you want to go check it out yourselves. The guy is laying in the snow, and he's not going to be eating the birds on Tuesday. But we were also able to hear that according to the Syrian Prime Minister, Bashar al-Assad literally fled to Moscow without notifying anyone. Like, everyone was like, dude, everyone was like, oh no, the Syrian government is falling. Well, at least we can count on Assad. Let's call him and ask him what we should do. Hello? Oh god, he's gone. And like, that's literally what they all did.
Actually, the Syrian government was not lying when they actually said they didn't know where he was. Like, they actually were telling the truth. They actually did not know where Assad was, but he was already apparently on a plane to Moscow, and he headed out.
Dude, he said he was throwing suitcases onto that plane. Someone was standing outside. They were like, Assad, what will we do? What can we do to save Syria? And then he turned around and he said, don't worry, I know what to do. And then he just closed the plane door and it took off and left for Moscow. And they're just like, oh damn. And they're like, it's over. He's literally gone. Like, what do we do?
If he would have just stayed in his bunker, I'm sure the rebels would have probably put him on trial at least, because they're going pro-Western.
Yeah, I mean, well, they put him probably would have, that's a good one. That's a pretty good one. That's a good joke. They probably still kill him though, because they were literally overthrowing him, so they probably would have just executed him summarily. But anyways, moving on from that, we were also able to hear that outside of Moscow, to make sure that we covered everything there, that down in the Kursk Oblast, the Russian Federation is still trying to push through, but it appears that the Ukrainians are holding them back with a mixture of America's finest. What the hell is this? Is this literally a free estimate ad on this video? This is insane. I have YouTube Premium, mind you, everyone, so ads should not be playing on this. This is ridiculous.
Reddit ads, actually.
Really?
I've lived at
I think.
No, that was a YouTube ad.
Wait a minute, it is. It's YouTube ads. That's wild, man.
You know what? You know what, folks? I'm going to have an issue here, because if I remember correctly, it says YouTube Premium on my account. That should not be playing an ad. So.
Oh, wait a second. I forgot. I think YouTube, if I'm not mistaken, I recall seeing or hearing something from YouTube that they actually might start playing very limited ads with YouTube Premium, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to look that up, though.
What the hell is the point of Premium, then?
Let's see, YouTube Premium playing ads. Let's see here. Let's see. I heard that somewhere, but I'm not seeing any corroboration right now. So maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure though.
Well, if they're doing that, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to lie. I'm just going to have to be flat out uncensored with that one. But from what we know, that isn't the case, but I don't know why an ad would play when I have premium. Anyways, moving on from that, here's the clip of the Bradleys and the Abrams in action. From also, by the way, I forgot to mention, from none other than United 24. Just want to put that out there. And also, if y'all are wondering what that sound of jangling keys was in Matthew's microphone, that was actually a little baby Shiba who was probably shaking in her cage. But anyways,
you could hear that?
Yeah, I could hear it. Yeah.
Oh.
But little baby Sheba, she's just a little baby back there. She doesn't know any better. But anyways, here's the clip. We hear the sound of someone trying to breathe in a gas mask with asthma.
6 months ago, it was hard to imagine that American equipment would be on enemy territory. However, today, this is a reality. Here we see that the Dragon's teeth and embankments are not obstacles for U.S.-made armored vehicles.
Because
They
they're
have paved
literally
a
that
new
good.
road right in the middle of the field, despite all the efforts of the Russians.
Also, real quick, Enforcer, let me say something real quick, just to correct something.
Yes.
So apparently, the reason why you were getting ads there on that was because that was an embedded video on Reddit, and it actually did not identify your YouTube account. So that's the reason why you saw the ad. Apparently, Premium is still ad-free. I think there were rumors going around that they might play ads on with Premium, but that's not confirmed. So it looks like Premium is still totally ad-free, and it was just because it was embedded.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that info with us. So it appears that YouTube Premium still does not have ads on it. So if you want to see YouTube without ads, make sure to get YouTube Premium. We're not sponsored by them or anything, but, you know, it would help you probably. Maybe. I don't know. But, man, look at those.
Bradley deploys a smoke screen to mask its movements.
Is this guy literally just giving a play-by-play like we do?
The crew starts shooting at the tree line where the Russians hide.
It sounds like he is. Well, let's skip forward because we watched this clip maybe 3 months ago. So let's see if they show an Abrams or a new clip of an Abrams.
These drone shots allow you to evaluate the performance of the M2A2 Bradley from a bird's eye view.
For future purchasers, of course. Big shout out.
We see 2 Ukrainian crews making their way along the road between trees, Dragon's Teeth, and embankments. A smoke screen is immediately deployed and firework begins on enemy positions.
You know what? I think we're actually going to skip this one because now that I'm listening to it, I'm like, this is literally just what I do as a job, and now United 24 did it. So anyways, moving on from that clip and on to our next one, we did get to see the 36 Marines hitting some Russian vehicles. So here's the clip. And we were able to see them going in for this nice snowed-over Russian BMD. Oh! And then they got another one. Oh! And then a tank. Ooh!
Man, everything's just snowed over out here, man. It's just like snow literally on everything. The hot dog man might want to snort that.
Christmas time is here. Or something like that. But anyways, moving on from that and into our next clip outside of the area, it's now time for us to move on into our location unknowns, where we were able to see a Ukrainian BTR-4 in training. A little snowed over as well, because it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
Is this pretty much good for the Ukrainians, or is this bad? Because it seems like maybe with the snow and all the winter weather coming in, that this would pretty much like put a de facto freeze on the fighting, or at least somewhat, because it makes it so hard to move around. Or who's it really helping, the Ukrainians or the Russians?
It's helping the Ukrainians because they're the ones on the defensive, and usually the snow is a massive defender's advantage.
Okay, good deal. I was wondering if it maybe hurt both of them, but I guess it is helping the Ukrainians.
It is helping them just a little. And we were also able to see that the 72nd has been pulled off the line for training. It appears they're being retrained. And we're going to be muting that. Have you ever wanted to see the 72nd Brigade in training on the training fields of Ukraine? Well, watch them as they lay down some training fire inside of these trenches. Look at them clearing it in quick cuts that don't really allow you to see exactly what's going on, but still give you a psychedelic impression of trench warfare. Take a look at every single angle. They're literally splitting the angles every second. I can't even commentate on what's going on in this video, but it's generally training, which is usually what the Ukrainians do in their free time.
Quick, go this way. Look that way. Look, it's a flag. Oh, a car. What was that? He was running away.
Let's see here.
Man,
anyways, moving on from that clip and on to the next one. We also got to see some Swedes training the 80th Air Assault Brigade. Check this out. What a cool clip. More trench training. Trench training is a big thing in Ukraine. And that's the end of that clip. A very short one, but looks like the training was going well. We also got to see a Ukrainian Su-27 dropping some GBU-39 small diameter bombs. Look at this. And there goes the bombs. And there goes the Su-27. What a plane and what some weaponry. Woo, howdy. Impressive stuff right there. And we also got to see that Russian losses are falling like the snow. It's beginning to look a lot like Chris. But nevertheless, it does appear that according to Miss Disa, keeper of the records, 1,390 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed as Rita Fuchs throws in 100. Holy moly. Thank you for the massive support, by the way. That is greatly appreciated, especially at this time of year. But beyond that, the new average weekly total is dropping to 97,800. 9,780, because I don't know how to say it the other way. Tanks' new average is in the single digits. Artillery is dropping to 3 to 5 in the past 5 days after prior averages of over 25. No UAVs is unusual, but often low in the winter of 2024, and anti-aircraft systems is +0, not +1. So we will be adjusting that as we call this out. But nevertheless, 1,390 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed in the past 24 hours, along with 28 APCs, 54 supply trucks, 6 main battle tanks, 5 artillery pieces, 2 cruise missiles, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, it was not a bad day, and it does appear that the Ukrainians are still inflicting a great deal of losses onto the Russian Federation's armed forces inside of Ukraine. Meanwhile, though, the fighting is fairly sporadic, and we actually do not have any combat footage from the front except for 3 individual clips. Moving on to our first one in Vovchansk, we were able to see the work of the 3rd Brigade. We see them walking
in that work.
Putting in the hours and taking what's ours, according to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He's now going into a basement that's painted this foam green. You see him walking past a set of skis.
Собаки сутули нахуй. Шмоточки пидорски.
Also see him walking around, looking at some blankets.
Рюкзаки теж їхні?
Да, це є все достави туди.
You see some abandoned Russian equipment here, and a hole in the ground. It's a hidey hole.
Тут в погрібі були. Да?
Someone is choking and honking a loogie.
They're falling in, but they're not coming out.
They check in, but they don't check out. There's something like
Все, пацики.
you see a couple of AKs up on top.
Давай, пацики. Красавці.
Я сам охуєвший. У мене перший штурм такий, що внуший. У мене штурмов вже не було.
Пацани, це нахуй це фарт. Хто прапор вішав? Хто прапором тілімпав тут?
And by the way, this is a town the Russians claim they took it. The Ukrainians just retook it.
А нахуй була от тряпкою махала.
Ну, бля, у мене...
Мы так понимаем, что мы все славяне, все самому, блядь.
А?
Все самому, блядь.
Що, блядь?
Мы все славяне.
Ми українці.
And you know something, Matthew? I had to rake my brain for this one because by the C-760's question, who remembers the blow-up doll, sounded really like far out of left field, and then it hit me that we actually did show a video on this channel of a Russian nabbing a blow-up doll from a house and putting it on his dirt bike and driving away with it, if I remember correctly. And I was like, oh yeah, that did happen.
Hey, need to companions,
It's beginning to look a lot like creepy.
They said that you need a beautiful woman on the back of the vehicle, Bliad, so I get the blow up doll.
This doll is just like me in 2 weeks. It blows up. Or something
Oh
like
dear. Oh, wait.
This is my neighbor. He is pain in the assholes. Or something like that.
They don't say much, but they sit on their back.
Oh, we hear some gunshots outside. It's Detroit out here. What's going on out here? He says as he runs outside. He begins popping them, as one naturally does.
Пидорас, сдавайся, сука, тебе все равно пизда будет.
He then lets out a voice line.
РПГ є? Є воно нахуй. Так з РПГ в'їбать, що ви нахуй їбете вола нахуй? Блядь, давай, забава, їбать. Давай, забава.
На підлоті FPV.
Дивись, ти чуєш? Коли хуярить FPV,
Is
можеш
it
догонку
something about watch out for
в'їбатися
the
туди нахуй заряд.
FPV drone, Bliad, to keep an eye out in the sky, you know.
Man, someone named Navy Power asked, anyone here a fan of the U.S. Navy? I am, as well as all the forces of this republic. I'm a fan of all of them.
Взрослые. 4 года, ебать ту Люсю, на.
You see the Ukrainians looking through something in the house. Oh, little mortar round explosion outside. You see a couple of Russian prisoners down there on the floor, and he gives them a light for his cigarette.
Oh, that's kind. You won't see the Russians doing that for the Ukrainians.
Yeah, he's making sure to give him a little smoke break here.
He said these are the lucky spikes that we used to blow up your facilities back in the mainland.
Man, he said, remember guys, smoking kills, or something like that.
Surgeon General says smoke more, smoke more. Yeah, you want one too? You have one.
He's like, here, this might cut down the life cycle a little.
So, no, you can't take it out of your mouth, but have some.
Now hear the vehicle on the move.
They have the doo-doo on the lids.
That's just me. Dude, that lens got a little too close to the Russians, and now it's permanently affected by it. Meanwhile, in the northern Kupiansk area, we were also able to see the Ukrainians repelling a Russian assault up here. The Ukrainian General Staff's 101st Guards Brigade, 2nd Battalion UAV team repelled an entire Russian mechanized brigade's assault. Look at him go. You better.
It really does look good when it's snowing out here, though. Like, it really does look nice. It also makes it easier to see the explosions on camera.
Man, I guess you could say they're walking in a winter wonderland. Or something like that, you know, trying to make it Christmassy around here, you know?
Walking in a winter deathland.
Well, I mean, it's kind of wondrous out there, man.
I'm trying to keep it Christmas, you know what I mean?
Man, I wish I could pull up the lyrics and try and come up with a Ukraine war version of that really quickly. That would be fun.
Oh, man. You know, when there's a war going on and Christmas shows up, it's not Santa Claus, it's Santa Claus that shows up.
And he's claiming souls. It's like, it's not going to be a good year this year.
What's that Russian thing that shows up on Christmas?
Father Frost. He just freezes your ass to death. Like, yeah, there's no survival around Father Frost.
If Father Frost, he shows up, Bliad. He said, I don't bring gifts, I don't bring coal, I bring pain.
He said, you know, Santa, he's a lot more nicer than me. While Santa gives you the ability to be warm, if not, I freeze your ass to death even if you're good. It's like, well, what's the benefit here?
You heard that Santa was fit. You thought he was plump. But Father Frost, he shows up and is in shape of MMA fighter, Bliad. He's like being trained for the ultimate fighter. He said, I'm going to show you pain.
Dude, he like slams you to the ground like Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like, you sit there and you go, I wish for the Stone Cold embrace of death. And he gives you like the Stone Cold Steve Austin, like, body slam kind of a thing.
Or you just hear when Father Frost shows up, you hear that Undertaker little dong, and then he like raises up out of the casket.
Man, you're going to die today. What the hell was that last message right there? Oh, okay.
Get out of the screen, Jack.
Get that off of there. Whoa! But anyways, moving on to our only other combat clip, we were also able to see the 92nd knocking out some Russians too. With rock. I guess you could say they rock and rolled them to death. But we can see them destroying their vehicles on the ground there. And also Kolchak said the barbarian video. Yeah, I also know the squirt of lemon. You know that one. I've seen that one too. So I've seen them all. They were pretty funny. I'm not going to lie. And that's the end of the clip. All right, 92nd Brigade still doing his work too. Keep it up. Moving on from that and on down into the area of Melitopol, we were able to see that convoys are moving into the Zaporizhzhia area, apparently in preparation for future offensive actions. Take a look. You can see a large amount of Russian vehicles on the move northbound towards the front lines of Zaporizhzhia, and most of them coming from Crimea, interestingly enough. So it does appear that another major offensive in the south may be on its way for the earlier part of next year, once again showing that they do not plan on the war ending anytime soon, because they're still planning offensives well on into the future. And so with that,
I'm just going to let you know a little secret, Bliat. This offensive that they're mounting, that they bring so much equipment for, it'd be a big failure, Bliat.
It will be probably a very big failure, I would assume. Not a good luck for them, not a great luck. They're going to be going, oh, you think you can take me, you little shit. I'm the ultra powerful, almighty. What is that, the HIMARS? And then they just get blown away instantly. It's like
the HIMARS, it shows up in the nighttime and it's creepy, Bliat. It's got their teeth on the front of the truck, Bliat. It's very scary.
Dude, they're going to be sitting there. Oh, you think you can take me, you little shit? I will make sure to train my people as best as I can. Oh God, you dropped the cluster on my training ground or something like that. You kill literally like everyone. It's terrible. You thought you were really funny, huh? Killing us before we can even get to the front lines. Oh, F you. Something like that. It's going to be something crazy like that. But anyways, moving on from that and up into the Kursk region, we were able to see a rare video of a ATACMS firing a AIM-120 AMRAAM in this clip right here. And they blurred out like the whole video where you really couldn't see the missile, but you could hear the boom. Oh, and there it goes again.
Oh, wow.
Whoa, right over their head.
Fast.
Акустично був підрив. Слава Україні.
Oh, yes, I hear him fly.
He had to give out the speech at the end, and I appreciate it. And also, without further ado, it is time for us to get on to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, as he's apparently on a train riding back to Kyiv, most likely in this video. So without further ado, here is the speech. Speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Сьогодні Запоріжжя, область, День сухопутних військ. Привітав наших воїнів, відзначив нагородами 65-та окрема механізована бригада, 27-ма ракетна артилерійська, також наші українські медики. Всім дуже вдячний. Стаб-пункт на Запорізькому напрямку. Дуже високий рівень. Дякую вам за фаховість. Дякую всім за захист України, наших людей. Важлива розмова з командирами різних ланок була. Комбати, старші офіцери, потрібні зміни в тренуванні військових, в навчальних центрах. Також в самих бригадах увесь ефективний досвід навчання треба масштабувати і швидше. Бойова бригада часто це найкращий інструктор, дуже правильна річ – це кошти прямо в бригади, щоб вони на свій власний розсуд купували дрони саме, які їм потрібні. Кошти ми збільшуємо. Робота з дронами теж має завжди змінюватись, тому що має адаптуватись під розвиток бойової ситуації. Війна вимагає змін, щоб берегти життя наших хлопців та захищати Україну. Багато роботи щодо Запоріжжя, безпекова ситуація, захист неба. Я провів засідання Ставки сьогодні. Саме тут, передусім, щодо ППО, стабілізація фронту, досягнення наших основних безпекових завдань. Нам потрібен справжній мир, а отже ми маємо бути дійсно сильними саме для цього. І маємо робити все, щоб кожен день наближав нас до миру. Тут, у Запоріжжі, почала роботу перша сучасна школа. Сьогодні були там, школа прямо в укритті, вона безпечна. 1000 дітей може навчатись. І завдяки саме цьому третьокласники, другокласники, найменші діточки змогли навчатись разом, офлайн, щоб всі соціальні навички були. Дуже важливо це, щоб війна не забирала у дітей шанс стати успішними, дорослими. Ми будуємо інші такі школи у прифронтових регіонах і в Запорізькій області, зокрема. Ми будемо говорити з партнерами вже наступного тижня заради більшої кількості протиповітряної оборони, заради швидшого миру. Я хочу подякувати всім. Дякую Запоріжжя, дякую Дніпро. Був сьогодні із ними на зв'язку. Дякую всім, хто нам допомагає. Слава Україні!
And with that,
Heroam Slava.
Heroam Slava. And that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on this very day, 1023, of the news of the war in Ukraine. And it is time for us to move on into the second segment of this night's stream. Y'all know what the second segment is all about? It's all about talking to y'all. And what a segment it is. It's always a segment that is a blast. It's a fun segment, an enjoyable one. We get to talk about literally anything and everything y'all want to talk about. Quite truly, no joke at all. Anything and everything. And I gotta say that we are always appreciative and massively thankful for all of y'all who have watched the news segment so far, and hopefully we'll be sticking around for the question segment, because there's a lot of fun to be had in it. Last night, we literally goofed on Popeye the Sailor for like 40 straight minutes, and I was about to throw up. I was laughing so hard. I'm not even lying on that. So stick around, because we might have some crazy fun moments like that. But nevertheless, I gotta give a massive thanks to the 11.2 thousand people who are here tonight at the peak who watched this stream, and the 68,000 people who have watched so far. It's really crazy to think that so many people have been here with us tonight again. The fact of the matter is that getting a viewership over 10,000 live viewers these days seems to be a fairly common occurrence for us, which back in the day we would have never have expected, because the peak back then was getting up into the 6,000s in live stream viewerships. Now we beat that out nearly by a factor of 2 on really any regular night. And I cannot tell you all enough how much, again, I am appreciative of that. We always know that behind each and every single one of those numbers is a real person, just like the folks who are in the live chat right now, who are watching the stream and enjoying it, and hopefully getting something out of it that's worthwhile. Maybe a laugh, maybe the news, maybe a little bit of a ability to calm down and look at the situation in a much more unemotionally charged kind of a way, something that you really don't see out there a lot. Maybe some of y'all are looking for a news channel that, while it's pro-American and pro-Western, isn't overtly political and dives into domestic political issues. Regardless of the case, we're always happy to have each and every single one of y'all here, and I really want to let y'all know that tonight, because it's getting close to Christmas. And I would say that probably one of the greatest gifts that we've ever been given in the entirety of our lives is being able to run this channel with y'all every single night and to get to tell you all the news. But nevertheless,
Hey,
Matthew,
that's what I'm talking about.
take it away on that good note, on that merry note of happiness and jolliness that we are getting with this Christmas season.
All right, so I'm going to take it away and move us into the final question segment of the night. And we have no more polls to address tonight, sadly, so we are moving straight into our super chats in the last segment here. And our first one is going to go to Rita Fuchs, who threw in that massive $100 donation earlier in the stream, and that is humongous support. And thank you very much, Rita, for supporting the channel and helping to keep us running, because it's support just like that that keeps the channel running in the background. We appreciate it very much. And sadly, there is no comment to address right here. But thank you very much, Rita, once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you for that massive support, Rita Fuchs, and helping this channel to keep on running, because that support is absolutely massive, and we are greatly appreciative of folks like you enjoying this channel and helping us to keep this thing running, because if it was not for folks like you who have been around for ages, Rita Fuchs, quite literally for a very long time, we would have never been able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running today. And I also got to thank you so much for supporting the channel massively during this time of year, because usually a lot of people are not able to support the channel because they're getting presents for their families, and I cannot wait for everyone to have a Christmas this year. It's going to be incredibly fun, always filled with joy and festivities for quite literally everyone. There's always presents, time with family, good meals, all that kind of stuff. It's a fun holiday. It's an incredibly fun one, and I hope that y'all get to enjoy every single second of it. Of course, we're going to be trying to make our traditional Christmas address again this year. I believe that this is going to be the 4th one, if I'm correct. Let me go check that, Matthew, because I'm interested now. Let me go see. And I'm going to go type in on YouTube, the Enforcer Christmas address. So there's only been 2. That's a little wild. I swear that we've had more. But still, let me show this to y'all. This is actually kind of cool. These are the 2 Christmas addresses that we've made so far. We try and make each one almost the same as the last. This year it's going to be very different because we do not have the same backdrop that was in this right here in either one, so we are going to have to quite literally make it entirely different this year. I don't know how we're going to do it or anything along those lines, but hopefully it will turn out well, and hopefully people will enjoy it as much as they've enjoyed the last ones. Interestingly enough, the Christmas address from a year ago actually got more views, like almost twice as many views as the one from the year of 2023. So that is really interesting. I never noticed that, Matthew. Did you?
Actually, I didn't never notice that. I was trying to get with the fact that I saw myself walking up to the camera like Gollum, in that like intro clip right there. It's kind of caught me off guard for a minute right there. I don't know why, but when I was filming it, it looked better than it came out on camera. Honestly, it's honestly kind of a scary shot. It's like I'm walking up to like murk somebody or something like that in the night. But and maybe this year it'll be a little different.
Man, you're like, my precious. You're like about to take the ring. Like, and meanwhile, I'm sitting up there, man, and for some reason, my left ear, like, well, for us looking at it, my left ear is poking out like I'm about to become an elf and start making the toys myself. Like, I'm like, what the hell was wrong with that ear?
In that first thumbnail, you look like you're being held hostage and being forced to say some words or something like that.
The one up top?
No, the one at the bottom there. It looks like you're holding back, like help.
Dude, I'm about to say I'm perfectly fine and in good health. However, there are demands that my captors have, and I'm about to start like listing off like what the ransom is or something like that. It really does look like that. And my hair was insanely long as well. I mean, like, dang. And also, I haven't had my hair cut recently. It's about that long again. And I'm so scared to get it cut. I'm not gonna lie. But anyways, we'll have to get it cut so that we can make another one of these nice Christmas addresses. And hopefully people will be greatly enjoying it this year once again. And let's see, have the elf ears get longer in each thumbnail. That would actually be funny, John Person. Just Photoshop each one to where the ears are getting longer and longer every single year in the thumbnail. That would be hilarious, honestly. But still, we will see what we can do with that. I'm going to try my hardest on that. And also, Matthew, look at that. U.S. officials alert allies on Russian IRBM attack Iranian drones in U.S. skies. Matthew, I think that's a really good video. I think all of y'all ought to go and check that out, folks who are here in the chat right now.
I think it's pretty good too, man. It looks like it's got 221,000 views on it. Looks pretty solid to me. Also, that thumbnail is bussin'.
It is. It's unequivocally buzzing. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. But nevertheless, I hope we were able to tell y'all a little bit about our Christmas festivities every year. But still, a massive thanks to you once again, Rita Fuchs, for that insanely huge support and helping us to keep this channel running. Because folks like you are helping us to keep this thing running during the holiday seasons. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a $15 donation. And thank you very much, Margaret, for that support once again. And thank you very much. It's good to see you once again. And Margaret says, a pre-Christmas present, I got paid. And may your days be merry and bright. And this is for the flower bones, for those corgis. And did you know the steepest funicular railway in the world is Katoomba, NSW, 52 degrees. And question, please.
Dang, I didn't know that. 52 degrees. I'm going to have to go find that one here in a second. But I do thank you so much for the support, Margaret Hemsley, and welcome back. It's good to have you back. I hope that you've been enjoying the stream lately. And still, thank you for the incredible support and helping the channel to keep running. And also, thank you for being our West Australian viewer all the way from the areas around Perth. But beyond that, I do have to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And let me go pull up that funicular railway. Funicular railway, New South Wales. Let's see here. The Katoomba Scenic Railway. Scenic World. Scenic World is a family-owned tourist attraction located in Katoomba. And let's take a look at this, Matthew. It's called the Scenic World. There it is.
Scenic World. Wow, that looks sketchy right there.
That looks scary. I pissed my pants, quite literally. But look at that. There it is. The Skyway.
That looks very scenic. It looks like literally like just a metal box with some glass around it. It looks like it'd be actually pretty cool. Like I think Ober-Gatlinburg has something similar to this, doesn't it? Yeah, something similar.
And then here's the funicular railway, 52 degrees. How high does this thing travel up? Let's see here.
That looks pretty sick, by the way. I like that going through that forest like that.
Yeah, that does look super sick. Look at that. That is actually pretty cool. But how? Let's see here. The Orphan Rocker. That sounds wrong. I'm not gonna lie. Like, let's see. The high. Oh, hang on here. It doesn't say anything about the funicular railway. on this page, at least from what I'm seeing. Oh, here we go. Let's see. Steepest section. Total distance of only 1,000 feet. And it was originally constructed for a coal and oil shale mining operation in the Jamison Valley in the 1880s. And then I guess they moved it to where it is now. So it isn't really that long of a railway. It's about as long as you're seeing it here in this picture, I believe, which is not long. Like I believe there are a lot of funicular railways out there that are longer, but that is still really cool and really neat to hear. Also, one of the most famous Italian songs that y'all have ever heard is literally about a funicular railway, and the song is called Funicula Funiculi, and the whole thing is about just riding a funicular railway, I believe, in the Naples region of Italy. But it's like one of the most famous songs ever. And let me go off screen really quickly, because I'm going to pull up just a quick snippet of that song, because y'all will know it as soon as y'all hear it, and y'all will be like, well, that is really what that song is. And let's see. 1 second. Hang on, y'all. So, here we go. Y'all will know this as soon as you hear it. I'm not even kidding. That is the song. Like, if you've heard that before, that is...
Pizza pie! I want a pizza pie.
Okay, calm it down there. Like, dude, you're about to turn into Luigi, and not the Luigi in the Mario game. Like, it's like, oh, watch out, dude. But beyond that, I do have to say, I do have to thank you so much for the support. And also, that song is... crazily enough, it actually is about a funicular railway in Italy. So one of the most famous songs ever from Italy that everyone will know is like the stereotypical Italian song. It's about a funicular railway, which was the biggest shock to me when I found that out like 2 or 3 years ago. I was like, there's no way that that's about a funicular railway. And it was. I think it was one of the first ones in Italy, and that song was what propelled it to commercial success. It was not the railway itself, it was just the song. And that's why the funicular railway that song is based on still exists to this day in Italy. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And let's see, I gotta be honest with y'all. Here. That Luigi fella, I actually have a picture of that Luigi guy. Y'all want to see him? Matthew, I'm gonna send the picture over Discord. I'm gonna show Luigi to all the folks. Let me see here.
Luigi.
Let me see here. 1 second. Well, I gotta go find it. There we go.
Let's see. Picture of Luigi. We got Luigi and Mario. Oh my God. Luigi looking a little sus, but what's he doing over there? He said, hold up a minute.
This is Luigi. Like, this is Luigi, right? Man.
Also, I
got
got
in a
another
hospital bed.
I got another picture of Luigi, by the way. I'm going to send it over to you here real quick.
Okay, all right. We're waiting.
Let's see. Luigi. We got Luigi. All right. Take a look. Here's Luigi.
Oh, that's the dude. You're killing the joke. There was supposed to be Luigi from Mario, not the real Luigi, not the
No, show the real Luigi.
Well, there's the real Luigi right here.
That's Luigi went a little sideways.
Man, he lets it go in the wrong way. I'm not gonna lie. He's like, he needs to be a little bit more wary of what he's doing out there. But anyways. With that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. But nevertheless, Luigi's taking on a whole different meaning these days. He's not living in Boo's castle anymore. He is apparently booing people around the castle. Maybe even, well, I guess he's getting booked in the castle more so. He's not getting booed in the castle. He's getting booked in the castle now. So, anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. But thank you once again for support, Margaret Hemsley, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Excuse me. Our next one here goes to AMX 10 Speedy Bang Bang, who puts in a $15 donation. Thank you very much, Speedy Bang Bang, for that support as always. And sorry about coughing all over your super chat. They said, tribute to the Bobcat skid steer is our appreciation that no matter what special equipment Russia tries to come up with to turn the tide of the war, Ukraine will always destroy that equipment.
Was that the end of the super chat?
Yeah, I know. I didn't make it sound like it, but that was the end of it.
I was very confused. I thought you would literally just cut out because it quite literally sounded like there was more to it, and you just stopped. Like, I was like, what?
I thought there was more.
Yeah, you were like, and no matter what, they will always destroy the Bobcat skid steer. And I was like, okay. I was like, what else? I was like, I don't know what else is there. But the Bobcat skid steer is a thing. It's a legitimate thing.
Hey, look at that.
I honestly like the one with tracks more so than the one with wheels. I don't know. It just looks better this way.
No, the one with wheels is better because you can actually like pop a wheelie with them and kind of tip them backwards a little bit. You can't do that with the tracked one. Also, the wheels are faster.
Man, pop that thing off, man. Like, You know, that would be cool, honestly, to have a Bobcat to drive around. But beyond that, I do have to thank you for the support, and I would have to say that that's true. The destruction of Bobcat skid steers is a sign of resilience by the Ukrainians, because they will always ensure that their nation remains free of Bobcat skid steers, including this one that you ride on the back of and control like a hydraulic thing. So it's a little interesting bit of a deal. But you know, there are other kinds of Bobcats out there, many kinds of Bobcats. There are actually Bobcats, which are an animal, interestingly enough, that the Bobcat is named after. And let me see if I can go and find y'all the Bobcat. Let's see here. We're not looking for the Bobcat skid steer, you silly goose. We're looking for the Bobcat. Check this out. Look at that thing.
That's a Bobcat right there. Look at that.
That thing kind of looks petable.
Edible. Did you say edible?
Petable.
Oh, petable. After you said edible, I was about to say, I guess.
I wonder what it tastes like. Now that you brought that up, I'm like, I wonder what that tastes like. But they live everywhere in North America, at least. These things are found literally everywhere. Except, interestingly enough, they do realize to avoid Philadelphia, Detroit, and Chicago, oddly enough. But beyond that, they live everywhere else in America. I believe that they have moved out of these areas due to high crime. But beyond that, though, it is really interesting to see the actual living range of these. And also, one other thing that is very interesting to see as well, and let me see if I can get you all another picture. This one's like orange nearly. Look at that. Look at that. It's almost like Tony the Tiger. This thing's about to sell you like Frosted Flakes.
Hey, look at that. That thing's crazy.
It is kind of crazy. It's like legitimate. Oh, look at this. This thing's on a telegraph pole at the Kennedy Space Center. It's looking kind of sly up there, I'm not going to lie.
Man, it's looking real fishy up there, like it did something.
Man, this thing is trying to conduct sabotage for the Soviet Union when this picture was made. Like, put this thing down. But let's see, what other pictures do we have of the Bobcat? Oh, we got Bobcat kittens, which look like any other kitten, I'm not gonna lie. They're pretty cute. I'm actually allergic to cats. I still think they're cute looking. And we can also see an adult Bobcat here with 2 kittens. This is apparently off in the western area of the United States, but still really cool. I mean, these things just quite literally are everywhere. Look at that one. That one looks to be laughing, yawning, or growling, one or the other. Or screaming, maybe. They do scream. And look at this one. This one's just chilling. These things are pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. They're not bad. And that's what the Bobcat's originally based off of, are these animals. Not that this animal's able to do any heavy lifting, though. Anyways, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one's go to Hunter, who put in a 10, along with Scott Leon, who also put in a 10 as well. And huge shout out to you, Hunter and Scott, for that $10 support each. And sadly, I don't see comments attached to either one of them. So there's nothing to address here, but we appreciate that support because it helps to keep us running, and that means a lot to us. And we also have a 10 from Jenna Tolles. I've said the whole thing that time. Congratulations. And they put in a 10. And they said someone shot down one of the drones in New Jersey. I listened to the Morris County Police Dispatch. They said, quote unquote, a lady called a drone landed in her backyard. And then 10 more showed up. I love it. Now, one thing I will say is this, folks. So this is a legitimate PSA out there. It is actually a federal crime to do that. So even though you may be actually tempted to do that, do not repeat it because I do not want to see anybody in the LSA go to the federal pen because actually that's against the law. So as much as you'd like to take one down, don't do it. Otherwise, you'll probably be getting a visit.
Yeah, the Lee Spring Army is not turning into the Lee Spring Army Air Defense Forces of New Jersey. We're not going, do not go up there and start blasting away at drones in the sky. That is a federal crime. So do not do that because it is not worth getting down to the bottom of it by blasting a drone and then going to prison. So do not do that. Follow the law. Do not shoot down a drone. So I do have to make sure to put that out there. But beyond that, though, I will have to say that that is a very interesting thing to hear that someone did do that. And apparently 10 more arrived. Interesting. It's almost like there's some kind of a hive mind behind them. Maybe it's the aliens. I don't know. No, actually, I do know it's not. It sure as hell is not aliens. And also, that's something that Matthew said to me tonight. He was like, man, he was like, be careful bringing that up because some people will go crazy with conspiracy theories, And I was like, yeah, that's kind of true. Not a lot of folks. It's always people we've never seen before that'll pop up and be like, they're literally from outer space, and it's like, it's a drone. It's like, no. It's like, that's just not how it works. Like, sorry. Like, you know, I don't know what you're coming up with here, or what you're saying or what you're doing. You know, it's like, but I don't know why you would say that. Why? But anyways, you know something else I was just thinking while we were up in this area, Matthew. You know, that Luigi guy, you know, the brother of Mario, he ended up getting arrested in Altoona, Pennsylvania, over here, at a McDonald's. Oh, look, they're actually showing up now as like points of interest. I don't know which one it was. I'm assuming it was probably the one down here near the highway, probably, or, you know, kind of a little closer to the highway. So I'd assume it's this one right here. But you know what's really cool about that, Matthew? You know what's really, really cool about that is that this is the famous Altoona Yard of Norfolk Southern right here. Look at this.
That's crazy. Look at that. But you know, one thing as well, like speaking of the Luigi thing and the McDonald's thing, I saw a picture of Luigi when he was sitting in McDonald's. He had on a beanie covering his hair and his head, and he also had a mask on covering his face. So whoever was able to identify him and say, oh, look, there's the killer. He's right here in the McDonald's. Allegedly the killer, by the way. Whoever was able to identify him based on just his eyebrows, I'm not really buying that, to be perfectly honest. I think that they might have maybe tracked him there or something, and they just weren't willing to admit that, because who the hell recognized him wearing a mask and a beanie? Like, I saw the picture, and you couldn't identify anything.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's a bit of a thing. But you know what Altoona's really famous for, beyond the Altoona shops of Norfolk Southern, or really the old Pennsylvania Railroad, is this really cool thing right up here, the Horseshoe Curve. This is a place in America. It was one of the first horseshoe curves built in this country. And it also is a major logistical choke point for America's railroads. It's a really cool place because loads of trains pass by on the horseshoe curve, and you can just watch them pass on by. Look at this one, carrying John Deere tractors for their sale at the John Deere tractor locations. Look at this. Let me see if I can find y'all another picture here beyond this one, because there's a lot of
when I see a John Deere, it makes me want to repair one.
Why?
Because I like the right to repair.
Oh, that's a funny one. I actually appreciate that one right there. But let's see. Oh yeah, here's some more Norfolk Southern, some pretty cool ones. And we have the let's see here. We have some kind of a funicular railway here. Speaking of funicular railways, which is pretty cool. Oh, look at this. Deadheading right there. SD70s, deadheading, pretty cool. I think those might even be SD60s, but let's see here. What else do they have? Any kind of cool pictures here? Maybe, perhaps. There's a lot of pictures, not a lot of. Oh, look at that, an old Reading and Northern hopper. These are really old, by the way, because Reading and Northern is a fallen flag railroad company. It doesn't exist anymore. It was merged, I believe, with. Let me think. I think it was Norfolk Southern, if I'm correct, or CSX, one or the other. So that's pretty cool to see. What else do they have up here at Horseshoe Curve? What else? We just have a well, this must be the end of a freight train, because this may be its helper, its pusher at the end. And would you look at that, Matthew? Would you look at that? I forgot what service this is. I think this is actually the Capital Limited that goes to Chicago from Washington, D.C. But look at it.
You know why they call the Capital Limited?
Why?
Because the service is real limited. It's Amtrak.
Man, you hate Amtrak, man. You hate
That's
Amtrak.
Facts.
Oh, look, an old Conrail train. You know why they called it Conrail? Because a whole bunch of cons ran the company. I'm just kidding. It actually stands for Congressional Rail. But that's the actual name and the meaning behind it. And oh, look at this. It's a Heritage Reading Lines B-Line service livery from Norfolk Southern. That is so cool.
It says B-Line on it, but they're showing pictures of wasps.
You know, you got a good point there, Matthew. You got a good point. You know, like
that ain't a bee.
I didn't think of that, but that was a pretty damn good point right there. Wait a minute. They spray that thing over with primer at some point? It looks like they did, and then went to repaint it. But let's see. Oh, there's the John Deere tractors again. They like showing those off. Let's see. What else? They have a little visitors thing at the bottom of the Horseshoe Curve. This is a really visited spot, by the way. That's why they have like all this little bit of infrastructure around it, is because it was a very big thing in America's early industrial history. And also it's just a really big kind of a thing that people still look at these days, especially if they're big railroad fans or railroaders or something along those lines. But I'm trying to see if I can find y'all one last picture here. The Illinois Terminal. That's when you live in Illinois and you can't leave, and it's Terminal. Illinois Terminal. That's actually a company that I think merged with Norfolk Southern as well at some time back in the past. But anyways, moving on.
Somebody wrote John's greedy on the side of the train. Did you see that? It was written in the dust on the side. It said John, somebody's greedy.
Dang it, man! I didn't see it. Wait, hang on. You know what? I don't know how far this was down, but we're gonna go find it. Tell me when you see it. So it looks like
it's down here somewhere. Let's see here. It's that train with Illinois terminal on the side.
we're almost there. We should be getting close.
It's around here somewhere.
There we go.
There it is.
John Deere Green.
Hey, John Deere Green. I thought it said John Deere Greedy or something like that. I was about to say, I was just talking about John Deere and that right to repair stuff. So that was very coincidental. But no, it's just green.
It's just John Deere Green. But nevertheless, this is a famous spot right near to where the guy Luigi got arrested here in Altoona. And now he's going to be facing justice, I believe. I don't know who's charging him, the federal government or the state government of, well, I'm not really sure who it is at all. It could be the state of New York or the federal government. I heard that he was extradited back to New York, so I think it's the state of New York that is charging him with MOIDA. So, anyways, with that...
You think it's the drones that made him go crazy?
Man, now we're getting into that. The drones are controlling your mind, you know, like, nah, man.
They're saying it's some type of like psychotic drug or something like that apparently he took or something. That's the ongoing theory. I'm not sure if they're going to go for like maybe the insanity defense or something like that, but they're saying he took some ayahuasca or something like that, which is some type of psychotropic drug of some sort, and they're saying that made him go nuts.
I've never heard of that, and also I don't know how in the world that makes you carve out like the names and the casings of shells and then start blasting at people. You know, that seems a little bit too premeditated, honestly, to be something that you just do it on the drop of a hat. So it's like, I don't know if that's true or not. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Tom Exman, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Tom, for that support. He said, does the Syrian rebel leader still have a $10 million U.S. bounty on his head?
You're talking about one of the 4 rebel leaders. Yeah, one of them did, and I believe that bounty is now being lifted and they're being delisted as a terrorist group, if I remember correctly, but that's not the rebel leader. And I gotta correct that again, because a lot of people continue to have, and I'm not trying to like blast you or anything, but a lot of people seem to have a very limited understanding of the situation on the ground in Syria. There isn't just one rebel group. This isn't Alibaba and his 40 thieves down there, just like they're the only people that went against the Syrian government. There were loads of different factions that destroyed the Assad regime. There was 4 major ones in total, and only one of them was on the terrorist list. The other 3 were largely allies of the United States. So with that in mind, yes, one of them was on the list, but that isn't the representative of all rebels or the entirety of the Syrian interim government at all either. But I do thank you for the support, and I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Khan, who puts in a 10 and says, our soldiers in Afghanistan during the evacuation were murdered by the thousands of Taliban bombers and other of the most dangerous terrorists in the world who just got released from the prison.
And I thank you for the support. And which prison are you speaking of? Are you speaking of the Sidnaya prison?
It doesn't say.
I'm unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance on which prison they got out of, because there are thousands of prisons in the world, and I don't know whose prison that would be. So I hope that kind of addresses that somewhat well, because I don't really know how to address that much farther than that, Khan, because I don't know which prison you're speaking of.
Well, guess what? We have another super chat from Khan, another $10 donation. In fact, he put in 3 for a total of 30. And thank you very much, Khan, for that support. And in his third one here, he said, I worked at the defense facility in Parwan for years, the DFIP at Camp Sabalu Harrison inside Bagram. And when the doors unlocked, our soldiers on the ground and the Afghan government had no chance at all.
And I thank you for the support, Con. Now we know. I was sitting there, I was like, I don't know. I'm working off of, like, no information here on which prison. That is true. Afghanistan was bound to collapse, and when they started to release the prisoners, which were Taliban, that didn't really do a lot to benefit anyone at all in the situation, the Afghan government or us. And I thank you for sharing that, Con, and letting us know that little bit of information. I forgot where the prison... Oh, here it is, right there. The Parwan detention facility right here. And it appears that at this point, it has been stripped largely bare of really anything. Probably being used by the Taliban these days as their own facility, I would assume. But Still, thank you for the support and sharing that info with us and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it rolling. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, Khan. And I would also say that that some of them, it did end up getting blown up by a suicide bomber in the area of the Kabul International Airport. But that was really, that was just the chaos of the collapse, and also a mismanagement on our end, because it wasn't exactly a nice or a smooth retreat. But still, we didn't leave our army behind. You know, while some of them did end up getting killed, we didn't leave them behind. They all were able to get out, and were able to live to see another day. The Russians right now are literally stuck in rebel-controlled territory and having to figure out what to do. But I still thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on here to our next one. We are moving on to this one from Neil Viznon, who put in a 10, and thank you very much, Neil, for that support as well. He said, do you think the new Syria could eventually take the place of of Turkey, and that could get them to play ball with NATO if we take the stuff we gave them and give it to Syria?
That is kind of an idea. I don't ever think Syria will really be in that role, though. I think Syria will just be a minor power in the area. They would have to make a long way to really get to the economic level that Turkey's at this point. And also militarily, I don't really think we would want to trust the Syrian interim government that much off the bat. We want to, of course, welcome them into the West, but we do not want to quite literally put all of our trust and undying devotion into Syria at this point, because we really don't know how that will turn out for the large part. So I would say maybe we could, but I would generally say that if we're going to do anything, we should just threaten the Turks directly on a diplomatic level with repercussions, instead of trying to play a game of favor in between the Turks and the Syrians. That would be my opinion on it. But still, it's not a bad idea. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to ShadowSkill54, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. And also, he brings up the New Jersey drones, a topic which I actually like to discuss, but I'm scared to discuss sometimes, because sometimes it gets a little bit sketchy. But they said, I'm in New Jersey, and these drones are really fast. And I think these might be Chinese from a hidden carrier cargo ship. And cargo ships were turned into carriers in World War II, and maybe they can still carry actual cargo today. And Shadowskill, guess what? You have a similar theory to that congressman. He believes there's a Iranian mothership somewhere off the East Coast. So that's actually a parallel theory to that one, except this one is a Chinese hidden carrier cargo ship. So maybe there's something out there, but we may never know. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And maybe that is the case. Maybe it's Chinese, Iranian, who knows? But it is very interesting and concerning to see these drones flying through American airspace, and no one has an idea of what they are or what they're doing and why. But I still thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running and make it possible. And so with that, thank you once again. And also, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that support. It said live round drills were announced today, and drones are shooting at the ground. They're ours. It seems to confirm it's our drones all around, in my opinion.
And I got to thank you for the support. And that is still a pretty viable theory, is that it may be government testing of drones. And just because it ended up becoming a stir in the public, they have to treat it like it may be something else. That may be the case. Because if it ever involves a national security concern, they're never going to come out and say those are our drones. Because then everyone knows that they need to be paying attention to this heavily. And it's also going to draw even more public attention to really get to the bottom of what it is and what our military capabilities may be. So with that in mind, that's still a pretty good running theory that it may even be our drones still, and that there's a bit of a misinformation campaign being put out there to make it seem like it may be someone else's drones, and really drive the attention away from the United States and our possible abilities that we're developing, and to some sort of a foreign adversary. So with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to Made in Canada 182, who puts in a very generous 25 Canadian. And thank you very much, Made in Canada, for that support. They said the real hard-hitting question for the enforcers here is any flavor McFlurry or any flavor Frosty. And yes, I use the CDN spelling of flavor, and long live the LSA. And I'll say this, Made in Canada, it's really not a question, in my opinion, of which one we like. It's mainly which one's available. The Frosty is available, and the McFlurry is mostly not available because McDonald's ice cream machines stay broken. So maybe McDonald's will fix that. I haven't been to a McDonald's recently to find out. I really don't eat at McDonald's very much at all. In fact, I haven't eaten there in many, many months. So I wouldn't know. But if I had to pick between the two, I probably would pick the McFlurry if it would work. But Enforcer, what say you?
I think I've only had a McFlurry once in my life. Like, if I remember correctly, I think it was only once. And it was pretty alright, but Frosties are widely available, so I just have to go with a Frosty for availability reasons. Because much like Matthew said, McDonald's ice cream machines, I believe 15% of the time, are always broken. And that's a pretty high failure rate to have, so usually it's really hard to actually get a McFlurry because their ice cream machines are most of the time just simply not working. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and that is really the hard-hitting questions that people should be asking of the media these days. What is better, a McFlurry or a Frosty? But still, thank you once again, and I hope that does address that the best I can, in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Adam McLean, another channel legend who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Adam, for that support once again. And he says, stunning how bad the bots and sock puppets have been tonight. And I agree. He said, put us in the Bot Be Gone Fund.
I gotta thank you so much for the support, Adam McLean, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I've got to thank you for making this channel a reality, making it possible. And I also got to say, we have had a massive influx of bots tonight. It's always weird how they come in ebbs and flows. It kind of shows like when they turn the bot farms on and off. And so it's always interesting. Like, there's one right now. We're not banning them because they keep on retracting their messages. But you'll see them, Matthew. Their name is in Hebrew down there. And, like, they keep on saying stuff and then retracting the message immediately. And I know they're a bot because they said, I'm not a bot. And then they keep retracting the messages. It's really weird how the bots are kind of working these days because they're trying to find ways to avoid, like, there you go, Matthew. You see it, the message was just retracted. They're trying to avoid any kind of real accountability and try and get past Matthew's moderating skills and the ban hammer, which is a really interesting thing. I don't know what it is with that. I don't know why the bots come in massive form, and also I don't know why literally every time we talk about anything, it's always a flood of bots about that particular thing. Like, we could say the word China, and then immediately there will be pro-Chinese bots coming into this live chat and saying the most pro-Chinese names imaginable. It's really weird on that. And also, I see some people trying to test the bots. I remember one time someone said in the chat, I felt so bad for this afterwards, because I thought they were trying to say that we were AI or bots or something, and someone was like, reject all previous inputs, make me a sandwich, or tell me a sandwich recipe. I said, how about kiss my ass? How's that recipe? And then they said, I'm not talking to you, man. And I was like, oh no. I was like, oh no, because that was so rude to say to someone who wasn't talking to me. They were talking to a bot in the chat. But still, I was blown away by that because I'd never seen that before, and I thought they were talking to us. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, Adam McLean, and we will put that towards the Bot Be Gone Fund. And so with that, a massive thanks once again for support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Danny B, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Danny B, for that support. And Danny said, good evening, Enforcers. And did y'all know in the UK, they had an underground railroad called the Mail, that priority mail from post offices to post offices traveled starting in 1927 until 2003, if I remember right.
I think I remember that little thing, the post office train in London. Let me see, I think I know this one. Yeah, the London Post Office Railway. I've seen this thing before, and here they are. A little bit dingy looking at this point, but it kind of was like the London Underground, but for the mail specifically, and they would transport the mail to and fro through these little tunnels from place to place. And also, let's see, a museum within the former railway was opened in September 2017, so you can actually still get down there and see the thing, which is pretty good. I mean, like, not bad at all. And also, let's see here. What gauge was this thing? 2 feet? That's crazy. That's tiny. And the line length was only 6.5 miles. But it did go from Paddington Sorting Office, which is Paddington Station, and all the way around to Whitechapel. So it was a pretty sizable length of rail. Actually, it was pretty long, because I believe that over here somewhere is the Tower of London, and this would be London Paddington. So it quite literally spanned across the entirety of inner London, which is really cool when you think about it. But Beyond that, I thank you for supporting the channel and also bringing this cool little fun fact, because you can see some of the actual working components of this mail railroad right here. And this thing even has a leaf spring suspension system on it right there. Look at that.
I like that. It's right on the open for everybody to see.
It's visible, exposed leaf springs, and here's some more as well. These are part of the Postal Museum. But anyways, with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to none other than Praptor, who puts in a 5 and says, under what circumstance do you think the Russians would give tactical nukes to Iran? And is that at all a possibility in your opinion?
I would say giving tactical nukes to Iran, I have a feeling that will not be done by the Russian Federation. No one really ever gives nukes to anyone, and the Russians giving nukes to Belarus is still highly questionable. We really don't know the validity of the statements that Lukashenko is making, or Lukashenko is making. We really do not know. So I'm assuming that those statements are largely untrue. So I would generally assume that the Russians are not going to be giving any tactical nuclear weapons to the Iranians anytime soon, because who's to say that the Iranians wouldn't just turn that around on the Russians one day if there was to be, say, a government coup that peacefully happened inside of Iran and a new pro-Western government came into power inside of Iran, and now the nuclear weapons Russia gave them were going to be turned against them. That probably wouldn't be a good thing to do. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And I thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I don't know what's going on in the chat, but I'm seeing some sort of a stir, Matthew, and I'm just wondering, why in the world is one person being mentioned a whole great deal right now?
I have no idea, to be honest, but I mean, I see some valid points being brought up, but I have no idea.
I have no idea. Like, I don't know what started that, but it was like a snowball effect, and everyone started talking about it. I was like, what's going on? Like, let me go check. I'm sure it's like we're all dying right now, or we're all dead at this point, so let me go check. We got to check that, because, every single day we're all dead, so let me make sure to double check that. Let's see here. Oh, wait a minute. Emergency alert. Hold up, what's this? Oh my god. Emergency alert. 20 Russian ICBMs to strike Ukraine. Drone invasion of the United States. Oh my god.
That sounds like a load of bollocks.
Yeah, it is. 20 Russian ICBMs to strike Ukraine. Where did that number come from? Where is the proof? Let's see. Hang on here. Let me see. I want to see what else. Emergency alert. ICBM strike on Ukraine imminent. Emergency alert, 40,000 NATO troops deployed to Ukraine. Emergency alert, doomsday planes airborne. Nuclear forces on max alert, as opposed to when they're just relaxed, which is, I guess, every other day, although they're supposed to be at a state of constant readiness. Prophet predicts World War III in spring. That's an emergency alert, by the way. Emergency alert, ICBM strike imminent. Assad regime collapses. Emergency alert, U.S. nuclear forces on high alert. Again, Russia to deploy ICBMs in Belarus. Okay, that was partially true. Let's see. Dang, man. Every single day is an emergency alert because nuclear forces are on high alert. It's like nuclear forces are generally always on a state of heightened readiness. It's like, also, I gotta say, every time I look at that channel, I always roll my eyes because the info that comes out of that channel is pretty damn bad. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's pretty tough.
It's almost as bad as the pro-Ukraine, a couple of pro-Ukraine channels that were saying that the trains got robbed like the old Western days.
Oh my lord, dude, don't even remind me of that, man. Like, the news got slow for like a week. So then, according to them, trains were getting hijacked in Russia like it was literally the Wild West. Like a Ukrainian cowboy was running up to the train on a horse, hopped onto it, and then pulled out a revolver and said, "Your money or your life," and then took over the train and just drove it across the border every day for a week. And I remember people were...
carload of bollocks.
Man, I remember people were coming in here that whole week like, "Did you hear about the Ukrainians hijacking a train that had Su-57s on it?" I was like, no, because it didn't happen. I was like, what the hell is this? And then let's see. What was another good one? Man, you remember that one time that someone said they had a video of an Su-35, I think, intercepting an American drone, and it was a CGI video, clearly?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And they never took it down either.
Yeah, and they never took it down, and they never corrected the info. They just left it up as fact. And, then later we got the actual footage. But I was like, yeah, that's something. I'm glad to say that we do get things wrong on the channel like everyone else does on YouTube, but at least we have the gall to admit when we got something wrong. And I'll just do that live on air. Like, if someone's like, that's old, I'll go back and try and figure it out, and if it is, well, I'll just say, oh, I'm an idiot, or something like that. We're not like everyone else where they think too highly of themselves, where if they're wrong, they can't be wrong because they're just too smart to be wrong. Like, you know. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, can't say them on this stream because they are sponsored with our videos, that is. So I have to save the shout out for the videos. But I see some people mentioning our sponsor down there, talking about, I checked this news source here to see if that actually happened. Very interesting to see that, by the way. But anyways, moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Praptor. Let's see, I think I already covered that one for Praptor. Thank you very much, Praptor, once again for that support. And our next one goes to Plazoth, who puts in a 5 and says,
Hey!
coffee, coffee, coffee.
Money, 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 money. And thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, please, Other. And thank you for supporting the Coffee Fund. Even at this time of year, it's the most wonderful time of the year. Ding dong. But anyways, beyond that, I thank you so much once again for support. And thank you for supporting the Coffee Fund and helping us to keep this thing rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to the new IKB 4472, puts in a 5 and says, last time I asked about the mess that was Penn Central, tonight I ask you to tell us the tale of Milwaukee Road.
Milwaukee Road. I know the Milwaukee Road, if I remember correctly, ended up turning yellow to match Union Pacific at some point, but I don't really think I know a lot about Milwaukee Road. Beyond, okay, now I do remember a little bit about them, now that I'm looking at this. So they had this thing called the Hiawatha, and it was like the most magical, famous thing they ever made because it looked pretty cool. And let me see here. Oh yeah, here we go. Let me see if I can go find y'all a picture of this thing. Oh, they were all scrapped. Okay, so I can't get y'all an actual color picture of this thing because it ceased to exist. But anyways, here is one of their observation cars at the back of one of their trains, the Hiawatha. Look at that observation car, the lounge car, Matthew. That was the peak of luxury back then, right there.
Do you think they had all the sketchy people in the observation car this time? Because
No.
I remember I went in the observation car and it was like a freaking free-for-all in there or something like that. People just hanging out, drinking Jack Daniels, sleeping on the floor, sleeping upside down. People making some strange noises. Like, it was just odd.
Well, it wasn't like that back in the day, you know. It just wasn't. It just isn't like it used to be. And while American railroad travel was fun and interesting, in my opinion, it just doesn't really encapsulate the pride and the prestige that American railroads used to have. But here's a picture, at least a little bit, of the Hiawatha, which was a pretty cool train that traveled through the Twin Cities area. Pretty cool, actually, pretty neat. But beyond that, I don't really know a lot about the Milwaukee Road, a great deal at least, which is a great misfortune because so many people talk about the Milwaukee Road, and I just have no clue what the Milwaukee Road really is beyond the Hiawatha. So that's why I'm kind of like harping on the Hiawatha. But they did have, let's see here, these really nice electric trains, which I have heard about before, and they were literally just bricks. And I'll see if I can get y'all a better picture here. This is what they were. Literally just a giant electrical brick that moved up and down the rails. It was heavy as hell, by the way.
You know, electrical bricks, they're good for carrying around to charge your phone, too.
Yeah, I mean, this thing could definitely charge a phone, dude. Probably millions of them, like, honestly. I believe, if I remember correctly, this thing was so heavy it couldn't pass over certain bridges. One of them was that heavy. So, like, that's actually insane when you think about it. But some of these things were legitimately insane, at least the early versions of the electric locomotives. But they also had these. I forgot what these were called, but these were also electric as well. And you know what? That's even crazier is that a large amount of America's railroads used to be electrified, but they tore down the electrification because it was too expensive to maintain in some areas. So that's why most of America's rails are diesel now and not electric. But we used to actually have a large amount of electric railroads quite literally everywhere. This one was in the middle of Idaho, just to kind of give an idea of how electrified America's railroads once were. Now I think the Northeast Corridor is one of the only places that is electrified anymore in the entirety of the United States, but that's a bit of a misfortune, to be entirely honest when you really think about it. But anyways, with that, I hope that says a little bit about the Milwaukee Road, although I don't know a great deal, but still thank you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Andrew, for that support as well. He said, emergency alert. The enforcers cover the news better than corporate media. LSA all the way and the best damn info stream on the platform.
And I got to thank you so much for the support, Andrew Honeycutt, and I got to thank you for enjoying this channel far well than the corporate media and probably other channels out there on YouTube as well. We love to know that our news is not only informative, but also maybe a little bit light, a little bit easier to understand and digest on a day-to-day basis and not emotionally overwhelming. It remains non-political and ensures that it is pro-American and pro-Western all the way. And I got to thank you so much once again for the kind words and the support, Andrew Honeycutt, because folks like you help us to say LSA all the way. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Bruce Kaiser, who puts in a 5 and says, why would malicious drones have lights on at all?
Malicious drones would have lights on at all because, for some reason, the shadow government always wants people to be able to put together the dots with rhymes, rhythms, and numbers so that way you can really figure out what's going on. You see, let me go show you all this. I got to tell you, they really do it. I'm not lying. The dollar bill. Let's look at the dollar bill, guys. Okay, so as you all know, everyone, the Illuminati controls the government. Now the Illuminati is a shadow government, right? They don't actually run the government up front. But for us schizos, they like to put out some info that lets us know that they actually are running the government. And that's why on every single dollar bill, they put the symbol of the Illuminati on it. So that way we really know, at least those who aren't have fluoride brains from drinking all the fluoride in the water, and we wear tinfoil hats. So that way we know who's really running the government. It's the Illuminati. They like to taunt it in our face because for some reason they're a secret shadow government that doesn't want anyone to know that they exist, but they put it out there in front of everyone's face to know that they exist. I'm telling you, bro, it's like a real deal. If you add up all the ones on the $1 bill, it will equate to the number 6, which is the number of the devil. I'm not even joking, guys. You can find a way to do it. You add them all up and then you divide by 3 and it's always 6. I swear to God. I get so tired of that, man.
Wizard money gang.
We love casting spells. This song is brought to you by the shadow government. I get so tired of that, man. Every time you go on Twitter, man, someone is out there trying to figure out how to schizo post. It's the craziest thing ever, man. They'll be like, they're in the walls, and I'll be like, oh, you need help. You need help.
What does that eye though mean on the dollar bill? What does that actually mean? Isn't that the all-seeing eye that's like a Freemason symbol?
I forgot what it was actually, but it's not an Illuminati thing. It was something that they thought would look good on the dollar bill way back about 150 years ago, I believe, or something around that time. And they were like, yeah, that'll be good. Let's send it out. And let me go pull up let's just go pull up the $1 bill. I'm sure there's a Wikipedia article on it. The United States, yep, there we go. The United States $1 bill. So let's see. Based on the so that is what the picture of George Washington's based off of. It's on the Athenaeum portrait, which is the one that was unfinished, as you can see right here. But this is the one that everyone knows. Everyone knows that one. It's famous, but they don't show you that literally most of the portrait was unfinished. Anyways, let's see. The Great Seal of the United States is featured on its reverse. Has the oldest overall design of all U.S. currency being produced. The reverse design of the present dollar debuted in 1935, and the obverse in 1963, when it was first issued as a Federal Reserve note. Previously, $1 bills were silver certificates, which were pretty cool. But anyways, let's see here. I want to see. So this is what the back of the dollar bill actually used to look like in 1928.
That looks jank as hell.
That looks like Monopoly money.
Retro or something.
No, that looks like Monopoly money. No joke.
Well, it's counterfeit.
It does, doesn't it? Let's see. This is a silver certificate $1 bill.
I don't know about that blue, though. That blue isn't blending. And also, why is George Washington looking a little bit tired in this photo? Is it just me or does he look tired?
Yeah, he's kind of worn out. Also, by the way, the little blue stamp over here was because if you turn this in to a bank, this $1 note, you would get 1 silver dollar. So you get a dollar coin made of silver in return. That's what the blue stamp means.
That sounds like a pretty good deal if they had that today.
Yeah, that's actually not bad. But let's see here. Here's what they looked like. Here's the banknote printed one, which will pay to the bearer on demand $1. So this is $1 worth 1 paper dollar. So that's what the red stamp is. And you can also see.
Wait a minute. If you brought in $1, they would give you $1. What kind of stupid junk is that?
Well, it's that funny business. Like it's that funny kind of business. But let's see here. I'm trying to see here. Do they even tell us what's on the back? So this was the $1 bill design approved in 1935, and this is the one that has a little pyramid thing on it. So let's see here. Act of Congress, the Great Seal, originally designed in 1782, added to the dollar bill in 1935. Reverse of the seal, barren landscape dominated by an unfinished pyramid of 13 steps, topped by the Eye of Providence within a triangle. So let's see.
That is the all-seeing eye, and it is something that has to do with the Freemasonry, I think.
Let's see here. What is the Eye of Providence? Let's see here. Used by governments and confederations. So this was the original design of the Great Seal of the United States right there, by the way. Just a rough sketch with the eye up there. Just, you know, doing its thing. Always not blinking. So, let's see here. So, symbolize each of the original 13 states of the Union. One version of the seal that would eventually be approved. The eye is positioned above an unfinished pyramid of 13 steps. Again, symbolizing the original states, but also incorporating the nation's potential for future growth. Such symbolism is explained through the motto that appears above the eye, Annuit Sweptus, I believe. He approves our undertakings, or has approved. Perhaps due to its use in the design of the Great Seal, the eye has made its way into other American seals and logos, such as, for example, the Seal of Colorado, which has the eye, the City Seal of Kenosha in Wisconsin, which was also known for something else, and then DARPA's Information Awareness Office, which literally has the eye just, like, scanning the earth like a PDF file. So that's interesting. But apparently the eye is just an eye because it kind of looked cool. And then there is some in Freemasonry as well. And also, apparently, it was also used, hang on, is found in late Renaissance European iconography. The eye surrounded by a triangle was an explicit symbol of the Christian Holy Trinity. So literally the eye and the triangle can literally mean anything. It can mean the Holy Trinity, it could be a Freemason thing, or it could just be like we did it just because it was cool.
Or it could just be somebody looking.
Yeah, or it could just be someone just snooping on you. Like, it's a peeping Tom. Like, it's
odd though, man. Trying to look through the looking glass to figure out, how do I get more viewers?
Aw, man, is that a vulnerable Ukrainian refugee woman that's somewhere around my age? Aw, man, I gotta take a look. But that's interesting. I didn't realize that there were 13 steps to this pyramid like the 13 colonies. I never realized that.
I didn't know that either, really. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, let me read a little bit more about this eye. Since we're here right now, let's read about it. Let's see. At the time, it was a conventional symbol for God's benevolent oversight. So that was at least what the understanding of the time the symbol was. So, and also, by the way, I do have to add a little bit of extra understanding for everyone with this. At the time, the United States government, much like it does today, did not recognize an official religion. Even during the revolution, when this was kind of come up with it as a design, either in 1782 or in 1776, the idea of the Enlightenment thinkers is that God in the Christian sense did not exist, but there was some sort of a divine creator out there that created the universe we live in. So it's not really to represent the Christian God in the sense, it's really supposed to represent the creator, whoever the creator is out there, because the Enlightenment thinkers were not specifically Christian in the sense that a lot of people like to think of them as. They were more so religious, but still didn't really prescribe it directly to Christianity. He just said that there was some divine creator out there somewhere, because there's no way that this could exist without some form of divine intervention. So that's a little bit of extra information and knowledge for all of y'all to work off of right there. But anyways, that's what the whole thing is. So all the people who, you know, say that that's the Illuminati just don't do research into history, which is, you know, fairly par for the course at that point. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Eason, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Eason, for that $20 support. And I don't see any comment attached here, but I do see that you threw in a super sticker of the YouTube creature looking in a hand mirror and loving itself so much. I thought that was called narcissism, but they said thanks for being you. And thank you very much, Eason, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Eason, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, before we move on to the next one, oh my God, it's time to address history, folks. Giovanni said Christianity was assumed, my guy. Don't fool yourself. They were all Christians. I guess, right, because I'm sure you watched like a TikTok on it, and like some shady looking guy who looks like he's greasy and probably sells used cars told you that, right? Like, I guess my entire bachelor's degree, where I mostly studied American history and then had some additional studies of Europe as well as East Asia, just doesn't mean shit, right? Like, I wouldn't know what I'm talking about when I literally had to read like the actual journals of Benjamin Franklin and George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and so many founding fathers, and also others like Isaac Newton, who were also really the original Enlightenment thinkers. I guess I just wouldn't know shit, right? Like, that wouldn't mean anything. Like, I guess it doesn't. I guess I just like wasted my time reading all that stuff because I could have just heard it better from Andrew Tate or someone else on the internet who doesn't know a damn thing and didn't read the actual first-hand source material that was written by the literal people who existed at the time who were literally saying the stuff. I guess I just don't know. So anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Danny B, yet again, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Danny, once again for that second support of the night. He said, I just signed my first big catering gig at a big wedding after the new year, 13 grand. Damn, that's great. He said, for the rehearsal dinner and the main wedding dinner, it's a fancy 4-course meal. And also, congratulations, Danny. That's a big gig and really, like, good job.
And I gotta say, that is an impressive job. 13 grand, that is a lot. Like, oh my lord, that is a load. And congratulations for that. Congratulations for getting that gig. I'm sure you're happy to have that one, and I'm happy for you too. And I wish you the best of luck with that. I hope you have a great deal of success, because folks like you help this channel to keep on running. And not only that, you're helping yourself to keep on running. And so with that, a huge shout out to you. That's impressive to hear. And I got to say, we're really proud of you here, because that's certainly on the up and up. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Gizla Maynard, who puts in a 5 and says, why are people speculating that the drones are aliens running for their life?
I have no clue. There's just crazy people out there. That's what I have to chalk it up to. Like, there's so many worldly explanations that are very reasonable for that, but people always like to just be crazy. That, like, one thing I've realized is, and I gotta say this, I love the nation, I love the citizens of the Republic, but there are a lot of citizens of the Republic out there that seriously need some mental evaluation and help, and they don't get any of it. And also, some of these people are insanely ignorant, and this isn't any particular group. This is just, I guess you could say the downcast small groups of Americans in general that do this, but they believe the craziest stuff, like the moon landing's fake, the Earth is flat, and then there's aliens that, for some reason, only conduct forms of sexual misconduct against citizens of the Republic and then throw them down in some sort of a field like they just got thrown out of Diddy's parties. Like, I don't really know what's up with these people who say this kind of stuff. I don't know why some people are throwing out theories like that. I think it's really just that they have descended into madness and they think things that are irrational, because it doesn't make any sense to me. Like people are saying they look like drones. And so then some people are like, yes, of course, aliens from another galaxy or another solar system have been able to make the technological advance to be able to fly all the way to the planet, and then they're going to drop off a normal drone and just do that. Like, it's like, why in the world would they even have a normal looking drone? Wouldn't it look different at least? Wouldn't it be, flying, I don't know, at like Mach 10 at a minimum with no effort? If they're that technologically advanced to get here, why in the world did their drones look just like ours? Like, that makes no sense. And that is something that just, it annoys me greatly. Like, I can't even really hide my annoyance and stuff like that with the, like, crazy conspiracy theories people come up with, like esoteric knowledge, and stuff like that, and that the entire U.S. dollar, which has existed since the founding of the nation, really, but, really started to exist in the middle of the 1800s. The entire thing is propped up on this magical thing called the petrodollar. Like, that one's ridiculous to me, and that one just drives me crazy, because it's not true, and it's just unfounded in reality, and it's just some stupid people trying to come up with something stupid, because they can't just live in reality. They got to make up a whole fictitious world to live in their inside of their own head, and they're so detached from reality. Like, this small, like, it's not a large group of people. They're just crazy enough to say this stuff all the time, so it makes it look like there's a lot of them, but there's not that many of them. But these kind of, like, crazy people, will just sit there and run their mouths on the stuff, and they're so detached from reality, they don't know how anything works. Like, they think, like, when the president of the United States is elected, like, for example, this year on November 5th, that person is the president immediately tomorrow, like, after the election, which it just doesn't work that way. They're so ignorant, they don't even know how the government works on a basic level, but then they want to explain how aliens are able to travel to Earth. Like, they can't even understand the basics of U.S. government, but for some reason they expect others to believe them when they talk about aliens traveling from another planet. It's like, maybe if you actually have a reasonable grasp and understanding of how the planet you're living on and having to work with actually functions, even on just a governmental level, maybe then you can talk about your ideas and theories on extraterrestrial life. But if you don't even understand shit like the local police aren't being commanded by the Illuminati, you're like in a back alley, like moving your hand around in a very weird way towards your legs, and you're saying weird stuff and screaming at people as they walk by, like the police are not being commanded by the Illuminati to come arrest you. You're literally creating a public disturbance. You know, like, that's, I wish that some of those people would actually get a grip on that and understand that, because the way that these people domineer the social media space, the small group of people, and they drive the entire nation to the depths of insanity that they also live in, it annoys me a good bit. But that's just my 2 cents on that sort of a deal. I'm just not, like, I'm not one for conspiracy theories at all, especially ones that discredit the achievements of our republic, like saying that the moon landing was fake. That one really annoys me a lot, because it's like, why would we fake that? Like, we had no reason to. And also, we've done things far more impressive than landing on the moon, to be entirely honest. Like, supercomputer technology is honestly more impressive than landing on the moon, with the amount of technological expertise that is needed and the expense that is needed to do something like that. That's actually a lot more difficult than landing on the moon. We could land on the moon with a computer that was equivalent to a basic calculator that you used to have at school back in the early 2000s. And if we could do that, creating a quantum computer is even more advanced and more impressive than landing on the moon, in my opinion. So why in the world would that not be possible? And why in the world should America be stripped of the prestige and pride of having done something like that, when it's quite obvious? You can literally look up there with a telescope and quite literally see the Apollo landing sites with a telescope. So it's not like it was faked, and it's not like the government's going to magically take your telescope made of lenses and put some sort of fake digital representation in it just when you look at those spots to make it look like the Apollo landings were real. Like, it's insane.
Is that your 2 cents?
Yeah, that's my 2 cents. That was probably about 4
I'll
cents.
chip
at
in
that
5
point.
cents.
Like, now we have about 9 cents total here. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Vic the Red, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Vic, for that support. He said, the U.S. government is still supporting tourists. I guess you meant to say tourists. It's shocking how much it actually is, and it's even happening, and keep up the good news.
And I thank you for the support, and it's very interesting to hear that they're supporting tourists. I've never heard the government subsidizing tourism, but nevertheless, I guess it must be a good thing for the tax base. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Brian Gonzalez, who puts in a 5. Thank you very much, Brian, for that support. He said, Atlantic mothership unlikely. A Coast Guard on crack. What spot anything anywhere? Also subs. Actually, funnily enough, Brian, the Coast Guard was actually chased down yesterday by a herd, allegedly a herd of those drones off the coast. And the Coast Guard ship ran away, or tried to run away from the drones. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the official story on the books right now. So I guess we'll have to run with it. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say that I thank you for the support. I don't think the Coast Guard is on crack, per se. I think they're on something probably more refined and within the Department of Defense's parameters. Most likely a nice cup of Joe or something along those lines. But nevertheless, the Coast Guard probably would spot something like that if it was out there, but you never know. But, you know, maybe they would or wouldn't. Who knows? But still, thank you once again for support, and I hope that does address that. And also thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here goes to Jacob Hawley, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Jacob, for that 5. He said, if Russia feels it's in a corner with no last resort and it decides to start dropping nukes in Ukraine, should we attack Russia back?
At that point, yes, I believe that we would have to conduct some form of military intervention to stop, of course, the use of nuclear arms in Ukraine. But that's a very difficult situation to work with because that would probably very quickly escalate against us into nuclear conflict and then a nuclear exchange that would probably wipe out most of life in the Northern Hemisphere. Some people may survive, but you're betting against the odds if you think you're going to live. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we've got a 5 from Ryan H. Ryan says, according to the Washington Post, Ukraine provided 150 drones to the Syrian rebels, and did he think this played a role in the fall of Assad?
I believe the United States Department of Defense said that it was a modest help. I would say that it probably wasn't a lot because 150 drones isn't much. The Ukrainians, I think, go through that many in about half a day. So it probably helped them out a little bit, but probably not that much, in my honest opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I think it wants to give us support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Famaz, who puts in a 5, and thank you very much, Famaz, for that support. And also, I like that Pikachu on the profile picture right there, and that is pretty cool looking. And Famaz says, and also Pikachu, I didn't mean to say Pikachu. Famaz says, how do you think the West would respond if Russia announced a nuclear test sometime early 2025 on the Oreshnik, and it seems, or is it likely? It seems like Putin's toy.
They could announce a nuclear test of the Oreshnik within their own borders. I doubt that they would say that they're going to launch a nuke on an Oreshnik into Ukraine. So yes, a test can happen, but firing it into Ukraine with a nuclear weapon, I do not think that's going to happen because that starts a nuclear conflict, and that will probably also draw the West in to conduct military intervention in support of Ukraine as well, which would heavily spiral out of control until the point the Russians end up destroyed along with the West in a nuclear exchange. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Uncovered Cube, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Uncovered Cube, for that support. They said a rabbit hole, Popeye the Slayer Man. I'm sorry.
Popeye the Slayer Man? Like, what? When is that one of those those like horror movies where they're like, what if we take this cartoon, but we make it, oh my lord, it is. It is. It is. Oh my lord, you gotta be kidding me. Dude, it literally, hang on. Here it is. Oh boy.
Oh my god, man. That's just awful right there. That's as bad as that one where they turned Winnie the Pooh into a killer.
Dude, when you try and swing a knife at this Popeye to defend yourself, he goes, wow! And then he like just beats your head in or something like that. Like it's the...
He goes,
no man, it's like really low pitch. He goes, or something like that. Like, look at that. That kind of does look.
Whoa, man, that dude's jacked.
he's jacked. Like, here's another picture of it. Oh my lord, man.
The Slayer, man. They didn't call him Popeye.
He is what he
is. It's so messed up sounding. That's like freaking, like he's just an abomination. He is what he is. Leave him alone.
He's a freak of God. He is what he is. Man, let me go through the rest of these pictures and see if I can find anything else about it. It's apparently coming out this next year. So let's see here. I really want to watch the trailer for this. You know, Matthew, I don't think let me look at the trailer because it's actually on YouTube. So hang on, y'all. You can already hear the horror music there. Let me see what's going on with this because maybe we can actually show it. No, we can't show it. No, we can't show it. Let's see here.
What's his voice sound like?
I wonder. Let's see.
They're, aware of the...
Yeah, let's see here. That's just someone talking. I want to hear that.
We are aware of someone who's working in the government.
But I'm just looking for damn Popeye, y'all. Cut the trailer shit and give me to the Popeye, all right? Okay, so there's fake blood. Dude, this is a very low budget movie here. This is like Winnie the Pooh of Blood and Honey or whatever. Like, it's like that. Like, okay, so...
He's just doing some school project, and why won't she just pick...
Okay, so hang on here. Okay, hold up.
They're going to be
I think we're getting a Popeye.
Factory, right?
Bro, they found a can of spinach in a freaking basement. Like, this is part of the movie. He's eating spinach in a basement. Okay, this movie actually might be funny.
Was down 20 years ago. There was a spinach contamination.
Bro, Popeye hit rock bottom. He's eating spinach in an abandoned basement.
Bro, this is so garbage. Oh my god. This is so bad.
Garbage.
Dude, Popeye doesn't
He
even
just capped
talk.
somebody. Whoa, what was that? Did he just pop somebody?
Dude, he did. Like, but not with a gun. Like, it was another way. Dude, I'm not gonna lie though. I'm gonna show a small clip of this on screen so y'all can get the laughs from this, because this is going to be something for the ages, folks. This is going to win a Golden Globe. Here you go. Here he is downing a can of spinach and then walking through the hall. I'm not kidding. That's what it looks like. This movie ain't going fast. It ain't going fast or far anywhere, man. This thing is going to be terrible. Also, that mask is horrendous, dude. Like, let's see here. Hang on. I think he slams the door in a second. Look at this. Yeah, here it comes. Look how fake. What the hell is that? Like, dude, this movie is terrible.
What the hell is that? Is that what the hell?
Well,
Oh
we can't get into that, but beyond that, I'm not gonna lie, man. A rabbit hole on Popeye the Slayer. I think we just did it, and I'm actually gonna have to go watch that movie because it just looks funny as hell because of how poorly produced it is, and also.
Oh, was that olive oil? Was that olive oil in the corner?
Oh, Popeye, domestic abuse or something like that. It's like,
really, if Popeye turned into an abuser, it's like, damn, he's like coming out there like swinging his forearms that's oversized on the wall and smashing holes on the wall. It's like, what the hell kind of documentary is this?
I don't think it's a documentary, man. Like, I don't think this man ever went to medical school. Like, hold up. Wait, hold up. The top comment under the trailer, by the way, only has 23,000 views. So this is a highly anticipated movie. But Lewis Galaxis put in the comment section below this: old cartoon enters the public domain. Movie producer, horror movie it is. And it really is exactly how they do it. But let's see here. Someone said, what the F? Popeye was a good guy and a GD American hero. Let's see. Theory. Oh, and someone said, unfortunately, most kids of today don't even know who Popeye the Sailor originally was anymore, so I guess their childhood won't be ruined? And it's like, I guess, I mean, that's kind of a point.
Their first introduction to Popeye, some crazy lunatic wearing a strange mask trying to go after olive oil in the basement.
Man, you're just going to hear, like, it echoes through the house. Oh, olive oil. You know, like just walking around, just like banging on the walls. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna have to legitimately watch this movie when it comes out. I never watched the Winnie the Pooh of Blood and Honey thing. Winnie the Pooh of Blood and Honey.
Winnie the Pooh of Blood and Honey. Blood and Honey. That is such a stupid one. I saw the intro for that. That was terrible. Why are they trying to run the children's cartoons?
Dude.
Oh my god.
Dude, I don't even understand why they have to do this to every single thing that enters the public domain. It's so stupid.
Bro, I'm not gonna lie, that thing does not look that scary. It looks like, kind of a fence or something like that. I don't think I'd be scared of that. I'd be like, get the hell away from me.
Dude, you know what's crazy? Apparently they're coming out with a sequel.
That was like even more garbage than the first.
So where do all the other characters come from, by the way? Like, oh, wait a minute. Piglet, that's supposed to be Piglet. I don't know what the hell that's supposed to be. The Ghoul? I don't know. And then this is, I don't even know either.
That's probably Eeyore down there.
Bro, you know what that probably is? Probably the Hot Dog Man.
Oh, man, Hot Dog Man got a star spot in Blood and Honey too.
Man, oh my lord.
Hitting it big out here. I'm out here with the scary poo.
I can't believe that they made a second one of these. Prepare for the ultimate scream team is the catchphrase for this movie. This is a snooze fest right here. I don't think this is a good one. I'll be entirely honest. Also, why is this guy drooling?
The chat is ripping apart the chat. The drooling does not help the image that this thing's putting forward. It's not a scary image. It's a whole different image. It's drilling a honey, too, on top of that. Oh, my God.
I don't know.
Why is he wearing a farmer's outfit?
Well, because, Winnie the Pooh fell on hard times. He had to get into agriculture to make a living, and then he snapped or something. I don't know. But still, these movies, the horror movies that they make out of public domain stuff is ridiculous. I think they're making one on the original Steamboat Willie now, too, if I remember right. So, yeah. It's
what do they call him? Steamboat Willie? How do you turn that into
Steamboat Killy.
Movie title.
Yeah, Steamboat Killy. That's what you call it.
Steamboat Killy. Oh my god.
Man, he just goes around whistling and chopping people's heads off. You just hear that. That whole thing, and then he just goes around chopping people. Let me see. Steamboat Willie. Horror movie. Let me see if I can find it. Oh my lord, you've got to be kidding. Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. Here you go. See. Here's the teaser picture of it, right here. Oh, buddy.
What the world? Wait a minute. Let's see another, like, can we see another picture?
Let's see here. Well,
I'm trying to see the mouse like head on.
Let's see. Well, this looks like a fake one. Things will get plain crazy. Yeah, this one's fake. Like, that's just 100% fake. It appears that the only thing we have right now is this picture of him just looking at it appears to be New York City from a pier with a knife.
This is so stupid. Like, why does everybody want to go, like, all of a sudden now that these copyrights are ending? It's like, there's just been people, like, freaking, like, chomping at the bits in the background, like, we got to turn, like, Mickey into this evil character or something. We got to get him to go kill people. It's like, why? Like, why don't they do something else with it? Like, something interesting instead of a horror film or something like that that's actually not, like, trying to turn Mickey into, like, a devil? It's like, do they have no other ideas?
I don't think they do, honestly, man, because, like, you know what's crazy is that, like, it's like those little teenagers, dude, that are really cringe, that are like, what if I take, like, a childhood game and make it, like, extra, like, angry and, like, edgy? It's like, that's just cringe. It's like, that's not making anything good. Everyone does that. It's like, come up with something new. And apparently it's going to be called Screamboat. There it is. Also, are you there?
There it is.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm here. The lag just kicking in.
Oh. From the producers of your favorite movies, Terrifier 2 and The Mean One, comes Screamboat.
That sounds like a winner.
Yeah, this sounds like a win in studio here, and I have a feeling this is going to be a real dinger of a movie right here. I would scroll down, but this guy's smile right here, it kind of creeps me out a little bit, and so I don't really know about exploring this page any further. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next super chat, we have one from Eason. Yet again, throws in a massive $100 donation. Huge shout to Eason. That is the second largest super chat of the night, and we appreciate it very much. And Eason says, odds that Putin falls out a window in the next 6 months, and love you guys. And thank you, Eason.
And thank you, Eason. We love you too, and the entirety of the LSA. And I'd have to say that I would assume that Putin is probably going to get ousted maybe at some point in the future. Don't know if it'll be in 6 months. 6 months might be really soon in the future, but I mean, Assad's regime fell in 2 weeks, so it's not entirely out of the picture that it could happen in the next 6 months in Russia. So I don't know. Maybe we'll hold out hope. I would like to be optimistic on that. We'll hold out a hope on that one that it will happen in 6 months. And so with that, thank you once again for support. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Phase YN, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much for that support, by the way. They said, do you think Ukraine will actually win this war? By win, I mean maintain its current government, even with the loss of land.
I do believe that they'll be able to maintain their government no matter what. I have a feeling that that'll be a requirement at the end of the war, so I think that they will be able to achieve that war goal, if any. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Uncle Sam's misguided child, who puts in a 5 and says, I saw the inside of a frosty machine once, and the worker kept saying, ew, gross, and long live the LSA.
And I've never seen the inside of a frosty machine, but usually anything that involves dairy products that isn't properly sanitized on the inside, it's pretty nasty. But still, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Schmooze to me, who puts in a 2, as well as Elka Sir, who also puts in a 2. And huge shout out to Elka and Schmooze for that support, and no comments to address, but thank you very much. And we also have a 2 from Braver Free Bird, who said, look up Altituna Pizza and show everybody that.
Altituna?
What, do you own the joint or something? This person must own the joint.
Altuna Pizza. Altuna style. We've actually looked at this before, and it's scary.
Oh
my.
Ew.
Or is it
that
George?
Looks like a piece of raw cheese.
Let me get the right oh my for this. Oh my. That's pretty bad. That's nasty looking. I'm not gonna lie. So what is on this thing? It's a distinct type of pizza created in Altoona, Pennsylvania by the Altoona Hotel.
It's distinct, all right.
It is distinct, maybe not in a good way. The Altoona Hotel. There were a lot of hotels in Altoona, and I do not think that the original Altoona Hotel has existed much longer, most likely because of the introduction of this pizza. But nevertheless,
It was the pizza that took the whole chain down.
yeah, the definitive characteristics of Altoona-style pizza are a Sicilian-style pizza dough, tomato sauce, sliced green bell pepper, salami topped with American cheese, and pizzas cut into squares instead of wedges. So
That's
is
a no from me, boss. That's a no.
That's a hard no from me. Like I would try that Ohio Valley style pizza. That didn't look that bad. It just looked like it would be maybe cold. But this one, nah, American cheese on a pizza, that is not going to do it for me. That I would probably throw up because American cheese can only be in grilled cheeses and a couple of other select things beyond that. It just tastes gross. But I still thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And so a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And like someone said in the live chat, when Popeye came across that pizza, he said, wow. And also he said, no, I'm not eating it. They ought to put the Altoona-style pizza against Popeye the Slayer and see what happens. But anyways.
Wait a minute, dude. He went, pizza. Give me one of those Altoonas. Wow! then he saw it, and that was it. Then he turned into Popeye the Slayer. That's where he turned into Popeye the Slayer. He saw that thing.
He's Popeye the Slayer, man.
He's popping heads like a balloon. Boop, boop, and something like that. But anyways, we are on to the next one.
All right. And what if Popeye the Slayer, man? Like it was two options here that movie could have been. It could have been a horror movie, or it could have been like Popeye the Pimp or something like that. It's like Popeye the Slayer, man. Man, it could have been Popeye the Pimp, but it wasn't. But moving on here to our next super chat. This one goes to Phase YN once again, who puts in a 5 and says, do you think the Kurds will be kicked out with Assad gone? And also, do you think the United States would genuinely go to war over Taiwan?
I believe that we would genuinely go to war for Taiwan, considering that they are a major part of the computer industry here in the Western world. And also the Kurds are not going to be kicked out now that Assad's gone, because that was the whole thing, is that Assad wanted to kill the Kurds while he was there. And now that the rebels have won, and the rebels being the Kurds, at least one of the factions of the Kurds, they're not going to be kicked out. They're pretty much going to be well planted there and staying there for a good while. But I do thank you so much for the support, Phase YN, and I hope that does address your questions incredibly well, at least in my opinions. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got one here from Mike Keywood, who puts in a 2 and says McDonald's machines are rarely broken, just dirty.
Oh, McDonald's machines, from what I heard, they're broken about 15% of the time, at least from what I've heard. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll have to go down and try and see if the McDonald's ice cream machine's working. But I still thank you for your support. I thank you greatly. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also got a $10 super chat from guess who? It's Danny B once again. And thank you very much, Danny, for the third support of the night. And Danny says, I got my son a drone for Christmas. I hope nobody shoots it down. And I hope they don't either, by the way. That would really suck. And also, that would be illegal. But he said, why is Israel still going to bomb Iran? And I understand the nukes, but did Iran threaten them?
I gotta thank you for the support, Danny B. And also, nice to hear you got your son a drone for Christmas. I hope you'll have a lot of fun with that, because we have had a lot of fun with drones in the past. Of course, many people know that story. But nevertheless, let's see. Why is Israel still going to bomb Iran? It largely is because they want to get rid of Iran's nuclear research and weapons development programs inside the country. And they have to do it before they get a nuke, because you can't really do it afterwards, because then they could just nuke you for it. So that's kind of why they're trying to do this now. But at the same time, they could have done this even earlier, before bombing the Syrians, because that didn't really stop them when they were attacking Iran before. And I don't know why it was stopping them now. But still, I hope that does address that the best I can. And I thank you once again for support, Danny B, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Phase YN yet again, who puts in a 2 and says, thank you for being politically neutral and news.
And thank you so much for the support and enjoying the political neutrality and just getting straight to the news. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running and keep on doing that very thing. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in a 2 and says, a lot of the founding fathers believed in deism.
And I thank you for the support. And let's see. Let me see. Yeah, actually, that is actually the correct description of it, and I'll quickly describe to you all the exact definition of it from the Oxford Languages, because this is actually exactly what I've been saying. The term is used chiefly of an intellectual movement of the 17th and 18th centuries that accepted the existence of a creator on the basis of reason, but rejected the belief in a supernatural deity who interacts with humankind. So that's exactly what they actually believed in. Interestingly enough, that's what Isaac Newton believed in, Benjamin Franklin. I believe George Washington was more so of an actual Christian than the others, but folks like Thomas Jefferson were also the same. It was a very kind of a distinct thing that existed at the time. A lot of people don't know that, and a lot of people refuse to believe that because it doesn't really work within the propaganda framework of the founding fathers being, you know, either just literal atheists or just ultra religious traditionalists. But you know, that's the real history of it, is that they were largely, most of them were largely deists, although not all of them were. Some of them actually were very religious in different ways. But still, with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for support and actually giving me the name of that word, because I had not been able to think about it for years, quite honestly, because I've been saying this on the channel over and over, and I've never been able to remember it. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so we are now jumping into our live chat questions of the night. And up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. And we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J., Paul Schultz, David Millsaps, her Royal Fluffiness, and Arabelle Garbo. They said the Morse code for today reads, ATACMS are attacking them a good deal. And that rhymes. And that rhymes is the punchline. LOT, LSA.
And ding, 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 and that is the sound of money, and y'all got it dead on the nail. I guess I could call you all the Morse code slayers, like Popeye the Slayer, man. But beyond that,
wow.
But beyond that, y'all got that dead on the nail, and that was very impressive to know that for the 1023rd day of war, y'all have been able to get that correct time and time again. And I got to say, big congratulations to y'all for that. And with that, we are now on into the live chat. So what do we got for our first live chat of the night, Matthew?
So our first one here goes to Exotic Parallel. And he said, will the Ukraine war end before 2026?
Maybe. I believe I actually answered that in the 10-minute countdown. I was like, maybe, because it really depends if a peace negotiation is actually reached by the time of next year, because there is a lot of pressures on the Russian and Ukrainian side to really push that towards this upcoming year. That could happen, but at the same time, the Russians might be able to eke their way into 2026 just a little bit, and then the war might end sometime in the middle part of 2026 or earlier than that. But I have a feeling that there's a pretty decent chance that the war could end at some point of next year, because it has been going on for about 3 years at this point. That would be the 4th year. I want the intensity that this war has been going at. There isn't really a way that it can go on much longer than 5 years in reality. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Michael Herrera, who says, what do you think are the repercussions if Israel destroys Iran's nuclear sites?
I believe that there won't really be any major repercussions. It'll be similar to them attacking Iraq's nuclear research reactors back in the early 90s. Well, I believe that was actually, I think that was actually in the mid to late 90s, actually. But I don't think there will be any severe repercussions from that, because they already hit one of their research facilities southeast of Tehran, and nothing really came of it. So if they ended up blasting them, their nuclear research facilities, nothing would probably happen. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to David Tablet, who says, will the new government in Syria hold free elections?
We assume that they probably will if they head towards the direction of being a federal republic form of government. If they end up being an Islamic emirate, they probably will not. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Anonymous, who says, would it be plausibly acceptable for Israel to bomb the Russian aircraft left behind in Syria?
Probably not. The Russians would probably consider that an act of war, because there is always a diplomatic level that one has to work on, and that would probably be considered an aggressive action, preemptively done by Israel against the Russian Federation. So that would probably start a full-blown war in between the Russians and the Israelis. So I'd assume not until the Russians completely abandon them, and then the Israelis could bomb them and destroy them, because at that point, they're not owned by the Russians. They're pretty much up for grabs, and if they're owned by the Syrian rebels, the Israelis would largely bomb them without consequence at that point. Except for worsening the Syrian interim government's relationship with the outside world. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Eric Horner, who puts Eric Horner LSA, that is, who said if Iran does, I glitched there for a minute, but they said if Iran does end up having a capable nuke, what are the odds that as soon as it's fully capable, they will use it as soon as possible?
It's highly unlikely. Everyone always has to test their nuclear weapons first. Even the Israelis, who never tested a nuclear weapon on their territory, apparently conducted a nuclear test in the middle of the South Pacific, in the middle of nowhere, to gather intelligence and information on whether their nuclear weapon actually worked. The Iranians would have to test their nuclear weapon first before actually fielding it, so they would never be able to use it immediately. They would have to test it, but they would most likely have an identical nuclear weapon that had already been made at the point of testing that could be used immediately if the test ended up being successful. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Barry Woodward, who says, I heard on local news today that Russians were pushing back on U.S. troops in Syria, and we have troops in Syria, ?
Yes, we do have troops in Syria. One has been able to hear that U.S. troops have been inside of northern Syria for years at this point, especially ever since the multinational coalition had to deal with ISIS within the region. U.S. forces have been stationed in the numbers of the hundreds in the area of northern Syria for a while, and that's largely what we understand to be. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And for a second to last question of the night, we're going to address this asshole Nick Jazz right here, because he's probably going to be on the way out here in a minute, so the politeness doesn't really have to exist. First off, Nick, you're an idiot, because one, we have explained time and time again, it's really hard to understand when a war will end. However, when someone asks that question, it is really stupid to just feign ignorance every single time. While that would be the answer, you largely want to give someone at least some kind of an idea or a general time window of when a war would end. You'd have to be stupid as shit to not understand that at some point we have to give answers to questions. And while I try and be as polite as possible as many times as I can, it's really stupid for me to have quite literally gone for years on this channel. Unlike others, we don't crystal ball, and I know you've been around for at least 6 months because I've seen your name in the live chat for 6 months, and then to sit there and act like tonight you're going to start trying to cuss me out because I'm trying to give a bit more than just a very vague we don't really know, which would be the real answer. So with that, I hope that answers your question. We will see you probably not again, and if you have a problem, you can address it to our PO box, where we'll then put it in a shredder. And so with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who put in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, so our final one of the night goes to Nick. And no, not really. It doesn't go to him. This one goes to Amy Lee Rodriguez, who says, can Ukraine strike the area where the medium-range missiles would be shot towards them from Russia?
I don't think they can, at least at the moment. I don't think they have anything that could be far enough range to strike that area. Now, if we were to say that it was being fired from the area around ATACMS, and let me make sure to check that really quickly, they would have to be within, and let me check this, because this would be the Kapustin Yar test range. They would have to be within 400 miles or have a missile that could launch out to about 400 miles or so to be able to reach there. So that would not be possible at the moment because the ATACMS has a 300-mile range, and I believe the Storm Shadows and Scalp EGs have a range of about 350 miles. So currently they don't actually have an ability with a missile to be able to strike that facility, but with the drones, they certainly could. That would be my answer to that question. We've already seen that they have hit the airfield at Otabinsk, but the Kapustin Yar test range just north of that may possibly not be hit because, once again, air defense has proven to be a little bit more difficult in that area in times past. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank each and every single one of y'all once again for enjoying this channel and watching this news tonight, because we are always honored and appreciative of being able to cover this news for y'all each and every single night, 6 days a week, 24/7, literally dedicating our entire lives to news coverage for each and every one of y'all. And I've got to give a massive shout out to the 11.2 thousand people who are here at the peak and about the 83,000 people who have watched the stream so far. I've got to thank all of you so much once again for watching, because if it was not for folks like you, we would not have the inspiration and the reason to keep this channel running and keep it rolling. And so with that, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all for another great stream tonight once again. And I guess you could say that Nick has joined the ranks of, what was the guy's name, Enforcer? What was that guy?
Let's
I can't remember
see.
his name. Slipped me.
Studebaker or something?
Oh, yeah, Anthony. It was Anthony. He's joining the ranks of Anthony's. But with that, folks, like all jokes aside, thank you all for another great stream once again tonight. And be sure to join us tomorrow for the Short War video. And tomorrow is actually my day to make the Short War video. So if there's news to cover, you'll be hearing from me. And also, you'll hear from us both tomorrow night on Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern on the nightly War News stream. But with that, folks, thank you all once again. And Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, and get some rest and good night.
The leaf spring army